Good night, everyone. Good evening. Something serious is developing right now across the Caribbean. And let me see if my live is I'm on live. Okay, yes, I think I'm on live. Please let me know where you're calling from and let me know that you're hearing me. Something serious is developing right now across the Caribbean, and most people are not paying attention. We're talking about fuel pressure building in Jamaica, growing concerns out of Guyana, and the real question is: are we looking at the beginning of a future lockdown? As we've been hearing from Darrell Vaz of Jamaica, taking COVID measures. And if that happens, it doesn't stop at gas stations. It affects transportation, electricity, and eventually food prices, right? And people are talking about that food prices are going up. And we're hearing Darrell Vaz suggesting that he has to end the cap on gasoline per week. So it means, therefore, if gasoline goes up astronomically, the cost of living is going to go up, including food prices. So before we go any further, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from, and are you already seeing higher fuel or food prices? This afternoon, this evening, and we are in the night now, we're going to be joined by Mr. Fred Corbin from Barbados, and he's going to be expressing to us and telling us what is happening in the Caribbean and around the world. Because tonight we're not talking headlines, we're breaking down what this could mean for Jamaica, for Guyana, and for the wider Caribbean if this situation escalates. Okay, so I'm going to now be putting on Mr. Corbin. We are not going to delay any further. Good night, Mr. Corbin.
How are you doing? How are you doing, Andrew? Good to see you.
Doing well. Thank you so much for joining.
Good.
Yes. Okay, so we are looking at a very interesting topic here: Caribbean energy crisis, Jamaica's lockdown, and Guyana out of gas. I'm not sure if you're seeing what is happening in Guyana. There are long lines and people are waiting for gasoline. Could you tell me what you're seeing and what are your impressions of what is happening there?
Well, fortunately, that situation has now been corrected. And it was only for the day on Tuesday where we had long lines at most of the country's gas stations surrounding East Coast Demerara and going further south towards Suriname, simply because there were two fuel supply ships that were delayed in arriving into Guyana. And one would ask the question, well, if Guyana is actually extracting and producing oil, why isn't it producing its own refined products for domestic consumption, such as diesel fuel, gasoline, LPG, and so on? Well, let's go to the history of the architecture of the agreement that was done with Mobil Exxon. And that agreement did not include Mobil Exxon putting a refinery on land in Guyana. And the reason for that was that Mobil Exxon had a very bad experience when all of their infrastructure was seized in Venezuela when when Hugo Chavez nationalized PDVSA, which is the Venezuelan National Oil Company, thereby putting about $10 billion in infrastructure in the hands of the Venezuelans and no longer controlled by Mobil Exxon. So when Mobil Exxon did the exploration for the offshore blocks that make up part of the extraction and the drilling areas for Guyana, they said, we are not going to invest in a refinery on land in Guyana. We're not going to spend $10 billion doing that again when we can actually keep it on a floating platform and do the refining and the extracting at sea and fill tankers at sea right next to the oil platform from several different manifolds that are floating and just sail from there straight to the market. It makes perfect sense. It does. And Mobil Exxon did not agree to do that, to put a refinery in place. So actually, Guyana still imports its refined
Yes.
products
Yes.
because the oil that is extracted from the offshore blocks is then transported to a refinery, either in the I think it's the U.S. Virgin Islands. I think it's the St. Thomas,
Mm-hmm.
or the Gulf State of Louisiana, and
Wow.
then and then it is shipped back simply because when Guyana actually came online for the production or the real production of oil coming out of the ground and was ramping up its production, the refinery in Trinidad at Point Fortin was being destroyed by the PNM government.
Yes.
Now, Mobil Exxon has moved in and taken control of the
Refinery.
of the refinery
Mm-hmm.
at Petrotrin and at
Mm-hmm.
Point Fortin, and you will see that refinery brought back online. But that can't happen for another 2 years
Wow.
because when you shut down an oil refinery, there's a tremendous amount of residue that is left in evaporators and in pipes and valves and so on that has to be cleaned.
Mm-hmm.
That is a lengthy, time-consuming process. And you just can't go in and just turn on a couple of pumps and a couple of switches and so on, and everything starts back up again. No, 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 no. It's taking 2 years to get it back up and running. So the PNM government in Trinidad actually destroyed the oil producing revenue and GDP earning power of Trinidad in 2 years.
And
Now,
why would they do that? Why would they do that when
they were given
Trinidad?
instructions. They were given instructions to do that by the Biden administration. That's who their handlers were during the
Mm,
whole COVID scamdemic. The
mm-hmm.
Biden handlers and the Democratic Party wanted to crash every single major economy in the Caribbean region,
Mm-hmm.
and Trinidad was suffered as a result because the whole renewable energy and the green paradigm was being parroted. Not only that, but we have to understand who are the players behind the scenes that were making this happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that was
Mm-hmm.
the Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Motley, who has long-term strategic investment with the European Union and is tied into all of the green, carbon, net zero, all of this
Mm-hmm.
nonsense. And
Mm-hmm.
she was putting that forward to Trinidad and Tobago.
Mm-hmm. You know
Trinidad and Tobago, Trinidad and Tobago
mm,
never put one single cent into renewable energy other than a couple of solar panels on some government buildings.
mm-hmm. So why weren't they doing that the same thing for Guyana? The fact that, well, they don't have any refineries, as you just suggested. But
Yeah.
do you think that why did they continue the process of drilling and whatever oil drilling in Guyana? When Guyana was also working under the same administration, why didn't they just shut down Guyana's oil, production, if you will?
Do you know who owns Mobil Exxon?
Who owns it?
BlackRock and State Street.
Mm-hmm. So don't
They're
they
the
still?
same. They're the same people behind the scenes that are calling the shots on the net zero. Well, not
Right,
anymore. Not
right.
anymore.
And don't they
But
control Trump also? Don't they control
well,
BlackRock?
the thing is, the entire Mobil Exxon deal was put in place during Donald Trump's first administration.
Mm-hmm.
So when COVID came along and the Biden administration had already, Trump was still in power. When the
Mm-hmm.
Biden administration came along, they tried to curb some of that production. That's one of
Okay.
the reasons why Guyana took so long to get up to speed, because
Mm-hmm.
that whole 4 year period when Biden became president to the time he left office, Guyana was just only inching along the scale. Now
Yes.
it's full RPM. It's at
Yes.
maximum production and going
Mm-hmm.
for it. Okay,
Yes.
Guyana
Yes.
is doing. Guyana has quintupled its GDP earnings for 2025 or going into 2026. Fastest
Mm-hmm.
growing economy in the Western Hemisphere, and
Yes.
has the potential if the correct investment is done. The correct investment is done in a semi-floating offshore refinery. And we
Yes.
designed this. It was Free Winds, well, CSW Engineering, which is my company. When we designed the Free Winds Caribbean Food Security and Regional Development Initiative, we actually designed a floating oil refinery for Jamaica.
Mm.
Given the fact that Jamaica's oil discovery was in 1926 by British
Mm.
Petroleum.
Mm.
So 1926 to 2026 is 100 years of inaction.
Yes.
So that's what we
Before
have.
we go to Jamaica, however, I want to just zero in on the point that when we talk about Guyane's, economy growing astronomically and, at fast, rapid pace, I've had Professor Hinson, who is also a Guyanese scholar in the United States, and he was saying that this growth is not for the people.
No.
He himself said he wanted to buy a house in Guyana and, as a retired professor, couldn't, prefer to remain in the United States. So, where are we going in the Caribbean when we're saying that our economies are growing at a rapid pace, including Guyana's, when the people are not benefiting from these
Well,
growth?
it's a very interesting paradigm that's taking place, and it's nothing new. The British did it as well. Okay,
Yes.
the British did it when they were colonizing the Caribbean region. It was
Mhm.
all for Britain and nobody else. Okay,
Yes.
so nothing has changed. All that's happened is that the stage has been reset for continued U.S. hegemonic control in the region.
Correct.
And what you have and what you are experiencing in Guyana is that you are seeing a control of the export and the GDP earnings for the investment. And when that has been cleared off, then the government is going to say, right, now we are going to start putting some money into the coffers of the people. This is done in reverse. This has
Yes.
been inverted. This is the
Yes.
wrong way. What should have been done is, instead of taking just 3% on the contract with Mobile Exxon, it should have been 30% to start with
Right.
5% increasing year on year until
Mhm.
Guyana stood in a position to own 65% of the revenue earnings by year 10.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
That is how
Yes.
it should have been done. It was
Yes.
not done that way, simply
Yes.
because the right, the wrong people were in the right place at the wrong time. And the reason I say that is this: if you have someone who is totally consumed with making money off of a project that they know is going to be a boomer, they will put themselves in a situation, in the correct situation, but it's at the wrong time for the people.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay?
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
But it's deliberate. It's deliberate because
of
when we
course it
look
is.
at King Sugar, which, well, oil is the
Yes,
black
what you're
sugar, what we call the black gold. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, precisely
Mhm.
what you're seeing play out in Guyana. Number one, you have to look at the two players at the top. One is a former president of the country. He's the business mind behind everything in Guyana.
Mhm.
Okay, Irfan Ali is a head of state. That's it.
Mhm.
He
Mhm.
can talk. He represents the country very well. Have to give Jack
Mhm.
his jacket. He represents
Yes.
Guyana very well. He speaks
Yes.
well. He goes to the
Mhm.
United Nations, and his discourse and his dialogue is on par. No question about it.
Mhm.
But he
Mhm.
does not call the shots with regard to where Guyana is building a future.
Mhm.
Now,
Mhm.
the person that is in charge of that is the former president of Guyana, okay, who has a checkered past with regard to doing deals that have put Guyana in danger in the international community. And geopolitically, there is still a tremendous amount of mistrust of Guyana in the geopolitical spectrum, particularly for investment coming into the Caribbean region and as CARICOM as a whole. Now, I'm
Yes.
not criticizing Guyana. Don't get me
Yes.
wrong.
Yes. Yes.
Guyana is one of my homes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes. And Professor Hinson mentioned that too, that there's problem
exactly,
with the U.S. government and
precisely.
Ali. Mhm. Mhm.
I cannot criticize Guyana or the Guyanese people in any way, shape, or form.
Mhm.
I myself have many friends there, and I enjoy
Mhm.
Guyana every single time I go. The
Correct.
most important thing to understand is this: the hegemony that has been reinforced within the Caribbean region by the United States of America, which has now basically reopened a version of the Monroe Doctrine,
Yes.
has bookended the Caribbean region with securing of Jamaica and the securing of Trinidad and
Mhm.
Guyana.
Mhm.
Now,
Mhm.
everything else in between is inconsequential because all of the rest of the smaller islands, their entire combined GDP earnings is less than 2% of what the potential of Guyana could be.
Wow.
Okay, there you go. Now,
Yeah.
when you look at the potential of what Guyana could be, and let us step back 15 years. And the reason
Mhm.
I'm stepping back 15 years is this: 15 years ago, when we were doing all of the research and the proposals for high net worth infrastructure projects in Guyana as part of the Free Winds Caribbean Food Security and Regional Development Initiative, we put a proposal to the government, the then government, with regard to building a 4-lane highway and dual railway through the state from Georgetown via Linden all the way out to the border of the Takatu River with Brazil, through the state of Roraima, all the way to Manaus in Brazil.
Mhm.
We sat down with the Brazilian government in Manaus, representatives of the Brazilian government in Manaus, and explained to them what it is we would like to do. This would be an economic transportation corridor that would allow Guyana to build a post-Panamax export port in Ana Regina, which is across the Essequibo estuary,
Mhm.
linking it to Georgetown by bridges across the Essequibo River, okay, on the two islands of Wakenam and Supinam, and then into Ana Regina,
Mhm.
where a floating oil refinery could be located, floating offshore, just offshore, no more than a mile offshore, but being able to refine oil to all the refined products for domestic use in Guyana, as well as being able to export by rail going south into northern Brazil.
Mhm.
Okay? The transportation corridor was designed in this way, is that railways with 40-foot trade export units, 40-foot containers coming out of Brazil, Manaus, instead of having to wait for a ship to sail 1,000 miles up the Amazon River to come to Manaus, the ship could come to Ana Regina. And the rail link from Manaus to Ana Regina only took 10 hours. 10 hours by rail from Manaus to Ana Regina. That
Mhm.
was the proposal,
Mhm.
including dual lane highways being linking Manaus to Guyana. The projected revenue for Guyana, what Guyana would actually make in allowing that transportation corridor to be built and put in place as revenue for goods coming into Guyana and transiting into northern Brazil, and then from northern Brazil transiting Guyana and for export across the Atlantic Ocean, was $600 million a year
Wow.
15 years ago.
Mm.
$600 million by year
$1 million.
3.
Mm.
Okay?
Mhm. Mhm.
Now, $600 million a year in trade would allow Guyana to take most of Region 2 and turn it into one of the biggest industrial development, manufacturing, and agro-processing facilities in the Western Hemisphere.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
did propose that. We gave them the plans. Here is what we can do. We can put in a second airport. Instead of flying all the way to Mary and then have to drive to Ana Regina, you can fly into an airfield that we designed right next to the port, the post-Panamax port. In addition to that, we also put in a cruise ship terminal where tourists can now go up the Essequibo River, which has never happened before.
Mm.
So we enhanced not only Guyana's tourism sector, but the industrial, manufacturing, agro-processing, as well as international trade cross-border between Guyana and Brazil.
Yes. Now that's a great thing, but we're realizing now, Mr. Corbyn, that what I'm seeing in the United States when we talk about the Democrats and the Republicans and the same agenda, we would have thought that Trump is, pro fuel, the fossil fuel and all of that stuff, which he claims he is. But what now we're hearing, even coming from Jamaica, is that they are trying to save on energy. So that is the premise. So we hear now that what's his name, Darrell Vaz, is suggesting to Jamaican people that the fuel, the cap placed on oil prices will have to be removed by Petrojam. It means, therefore, that wherever it was capped, let's say it was capped at $4.45 per week, it was going to just float, right? So the people will have to assume the cost. And he's already saying that that is going to be in place until next Wednesday when everything will change. So I believe that there is going to be long lines also at Jamaica's gas station because, they are sort of going to be like, wow, the price of gas is going to go up after next week, Wednesday. So I don't think Guyana is out of the woods yet. I think that we're going to see pretty much the same thing happening in the region in terms of the the cost of oil. What do you have to say to that? Because that's what the Gleaner was reporting this morning.
Well, you have to understand, Andrew, that a lot of this is actually engineered.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Now, I'm not discounting the fact that oil prices have somewhat stabilized around $115 a barrel due to the tentative ceasefire between Iran and the United States of America and Israel. But we all know what is coming.
Yeah, there's
Israel is going to break the ceasefire and attack Iran again. That is
The
going to
US
happen.
is gonna break
There's
it
no
too.
question about that. And every single geopolitical analyst and every single person who understands the Middle East, including myself, knows that that is the next step that is going to happen. Now, we're going to see oil shoot to $200 a barrel because instead of Iran responding to just Israel alone, it is going to attack the United States Navy that is enforcing an illegal blockade outside
Strait of
of
Hormuz.
its territory.
Mhm.
Okay? Now, the Strait of Hormuz, well, 25% of the world's oil actually passes through it, is the territorial waters of Iran and Oman.
Mhm.
Okay? It is shared between Iran and Oman. And these are two countries that are allies. So for the United States of America to go into the Sea of Oman and attempt to enforce a blockade that is harming Iran, that is an act of war under international law. Now, what does it affect Caribbean islands by having a blockade on Iranian ports halfway around the world? Well, let me tell you how it happens. The United States of America depends on tankers as well as other countries to supply oil to certain industries on the east coast of America, as well as being able to transit into certain ports in the south of the country for refined operations. In other words, oil will come in a tanker, it is pumped ashore, it is refined, and you will have diesel, gasoline, and various other additives and so on, refined petroleum products being re-pumped into the same ship, and the ship will leave again. Nobody's going to sail an empty tanker back across the Atlantic. So they take fuel with them. So what would happen is that tanker would return to a country somewhere and pick up another load of oil, come back, have it refined, and leave with refined products and go to a destination. We don't sail empty oil tankers back and forth across the ocean. Nobody does that. It always leaves with either refined fuel on board or a similar cargo that can be carried. Ships don't make money sailing empty. The problem that we are going to be facing in the Caribbean region is that the last tankers that usually take 10 weeks to get from Iran to the Caribbean region or into the United States of America, the last of those tankers arrived in Louisiana 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
There's nothing else coming across the Atlantic. Okay, so what's going to happen is that the supply that we usually get from North America out of the southern United States of America that is coming into the Caribbean region now has to be rationed. So our fuel prices are going to skyrocket simply because we are not going to be able to get enough fuel to keep us afloat. And we are going to be the first to be rationed simply because we're too small to worry about.
Yes. Yes.
Okay?
But
in Jamaica,
go ahead.
In Jamaica, Jamaica is caught between a rock and a hard place because Jamaica only has so much gallons of fuel reserve in existence. That is rapidly dwindling. And thanks to the former administration, nobody followed the advice of building more fuel storage on both ends of the country, in Montego Bay as well as Kingston. Now, again,
how does that differ from? How does the reality in Jamaica differ from what is happening in other Caribbean countries? Do they have lots of storage in Barbados, and in other parts of the Caribbean?
No. We're actually in the worst possible position because when
it's a Caribbean reality then that we're talking.
Of course
about.
It is. It's a regional reality. It's a regional reality. However, if Jamaica had followed the advice that was given to it years ago, and my company was one of the companies that proposed to Jamaica when we designed the new post-Panamax port just outside of the Palisades, okay, a floating facility to be able to handle 30,000 TEU a month
Hmm.
in that area. We actually put, as part of the proposal, to be able to put 24 5 million gallon tanks for refined fuels for Jamaica.
Hmm. Hmm. But
Okay.
how do you look at what is happening, Mr. Corbyn, in light of the global agenda to remove fossil fuels and plunge us into this renewable energy world? That is what they're doing. They're engineering this situation because, as we're seeing in Cuba, there is an article that came out from the Guardian newspaper this morning, which I sent to you, that Cuba could beat U.S. energy blockade with $8 billion investment in renewables, says think tank. And when you talk about the think tanks, you know that they are the ones who set the global agenda. So, a report by Commonwealth argues rest of the world should pay for countries' transition as reparative climate finance, is in process. So, what we're seeing now is that they are creating this oil crisis, which is going to segue us in renewables, right? And Cuba could be the example that they're using for the rest of the region. What do you have to say on that? And that's why you see that Andrew Holness and other people in the Caribbean are not interested in building, any oil storage and capacities, because that's where they're pushing us to. What do you think?
Well, I totally agree that there is a concerted effort in trying to channel Caribbean interests into renewable energy and the Agenda 2030 and net zero and all the rest of it.
Hmm.
It will fail miserably.
It will.
Want to know why? Because Caribbean countries do not have the strategic depth of access to finance to be
Yes.
able to put the infrastructure in place quickly enough to be able to make the benefit gains of the initial inputs of doing renewable energy. And
Hmm.
one of the biggest problems with renewable energy, solar, wind, and what have you, is the cost of maintenance. Cost of maintenance is 65% of the MSRP. So when you have 65% of MSRP in maintenance alone, there is no way that the Caribbean governments will find themselves in any position other than to be coming hat in hand to the financial institutions, which is precisely what they want to happen. The financial institutions want to control the Caribbean by saying,
Right.
oh, we can make you self-sufficient and net zero, and everybody to, oh yeah, we're going to be net zero by 2030. Hat in hand, now bound hook, line, and sinker to the financial institutions. Now we control you.
Hmm.
Whereas righteously minded individuals who understand the
Hmm.
massive con
Hmm.
artists that is behind
Hmm.
the renewable energy drive, will
Yes.
just simply say, let us drill one oil well off of Black River in Westmoreland, and let us put one single oil well into operation for Jamaica. You only have
Yeah,
the
but they
Jamaica
want
one,
they want they want it to fail. I think you've answered the question, that they
yeah,
want it to fail so we can be dependent,
precisely,
reliant on them,
yeah,
and that is what they're doing. Everything that they're doing, they want the economy to fail. Another
exactly.
thing, as we talk about the world's economy and built on oil and gas, and notice here that there's no distinct difference between Trump and the Democratic Party. He says that he's pro fossil fuel, but what we're seeing happening in different language use of different rhetoric is the same thing that the Democrats were doing, fossil fuel, the renewable energy, and all of that. That's the agenda. We're going to be enslaved, because once we do not have what you call it now self-sufficiency, we can't do anything but rely on them. And notice that Daryl Vaz was suggesting that he has to go back to some COVID measures, which means lockdowns, work from home. What are we going to see in the Caribbean? Are they going to lock us down really, in terms of saying that in order to conserve, because he says they are doing their part and we've got to do our part in terms of conserving the use of energy? Do you see a future lockdown regionally? And how is that going to play out?
Well, I wouldn't be able to tell you how it's going to play out, but what I'm going to tell you is that if you try to lock the Caribbean region down based on energy alone, it will very quickly become apparent that the entire renewable energy grid sustainment practice will fail miserably. Here in Barbados, we have a delusional administration that is trying to get the country to be net zero by 2030. Ask them how much net zero they have achieved since being in office. Okay. And I'll just draw one very tiny microcosmic example. Okay. The Chinese government gifted Barbados over 50 electric buses. Okay. Barbados Light and Power were called in, and they had to install 2 transformers at the bus depots in order to be able to handle the capacity for charging these buses.
Yes.
That wasn't enough. So guess what they're doing now? They brought in huge diesel generators, and diesel generators are running 24/7 charging the electric buses. So tell me, how are you going to achieve net zero when you can't even charge electric buses from your very limited grid capacity and have to put diesel generators in place and buy the same fuel that you're now telling that you have to ration? Make it make sense, please.
Yeah. I've always thought, and Fred, that the whole net zero situation is population control. That's what they're doing. It has nothing to do with net zero. They know that that is unachievable. But what they always mask their agenda by telling us some fancy words, which means nothing, absolutely nothing. And that's exactly what they're doing. But we are going to face the fire in terms of famines, in terms of, just being able to survive. And that is what we have to focus on. We can't just, simply parrot what they're saying, because there is an agenda behind what they're saying and what apparently we see them doing. Go ahead.
Well, I think it's actually incumbent on every one of us to educate as many people around us. Every single time that we have a chance to bring the conversation up, or the conversation is brought up in our presence, to make people aware of the fact that what is actually happening is a population control agenda based upon the acceptance of society of these particular convenient models that these people are putting out. Now, you ask yourself the question, the Great Reset was parroted as, we have to destroy everything in order to be able to rebuild it. How are you going to rebuild something when you've never built anything before? Okay, There you go. Now, at the end of the day, all of that has gone by the wayside. The whole Great Reset has kind of disappeared into the distance. But the UN Sustainable Development Goals are still very much front and center and being financed by the Zionist Party in the United States of America and all of the billionaire Zionist oligarchs that originally put the whole plan in place. Okay, the same people that put the whole COVID scamdemic and all of the lockdowns and everything in place, they're just doing it by different means.
Yes, because they adapt the laws that they have on the books to us different scenarios, different situations. By the way, I don't think the Great Reset has gone. I think that that is also an evolution of the process. I do not think that they really saw us, acquiescing to their lockdowns, which we did. In fact, they're on records of saying that they never knew that, the Western society would have acceded to lockdowns. We did. So I think they're moving forward and they're being even more arrogant, I would say, about what they're doing with this Great Reset. Go ahead. Mr.
Yeah, well, I think this is where a lot of people have in their minds that we can't do anything about it, and this is prophecy.
Yes.
Nothing could be further from the truth. We have the power as righteously minded, spiritually empowered, positively empowered individuals across the Caribbean region to take action and to put our countries first. However, we must be cognizant of the fact that in so doing, we have to be able to educate at the same time. You don't want to do or engage in something, and when the whole thing fails, you then say, well, then what? What now? No, there must be a strategic vision in place where we look at what can we do within our own countries to be able to bring a halt to this nonsense. And this is where the business community, those that are not corrupted, which is very few and far between.
I don't think
Okay,
there's it.
we
Yeah.
have to be able to get those persons into a sphere of thinking
Mm-hmm.
where they themselves are now facing the fact that just because the small man is going to suffer first doesn't mean that I'm not going to suffer too. You see,
Mm-hmm.
this is, and the reason I say that is this: the same Minister of Parliament, Mr. Vaz
Mm-hmm.
in
Jamaica. Yeah.
Jamaica,
Mm-hmm.
his organizations are very, very heavily dependent on transportation.
Mm-hmm.
So if you decide that you're going to ration fuel, who is going to be loser? You,
Yeah.
because your organization is going to suffer immediately
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because your companies depend on transportation to get your products out to the people. So why
Mm-hmm.
are you saying that you're going to have to revert to COVID measures when your company is going to be one of the first affected? This
because
doesn't make
because
any
because
sense.
they're yeah, it makes sense, Mr. Corbyn, just like what they did with COVID, that they locked selected businesses down, but
Yes,
their businesses were the
right.
monopolies and got huge portions of profit from the same. So it does make sense what he's doing, because his whatever he owns there in terms of transportation, his
Yes,
business is going to be the real business there.
right.
If
So
you know what I mean.
as I said, he's these people are these. I mean, we had this discussion this morning. These people are
Hmm.
doing things for their benefit.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
who made more money than anybody else during COVID? Government.
Yeah. Yeah. And the
Okay,
private industry. Yeah.
and the
Mhm.
private industries
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they were bringing in the personal protective equipment. They were bringing in some were even getting involved in illegal vaccine sales, namely
Correct.
Barbados and the Barbados Prime Minister, and a
Correct.
whole host of other criminal activity went on. Why?
Yes.
Because in the absence of constitutions across the Caribbean region, there's now a free for all. There's no
Yes.
Caribbean country that has an active constitution. That was suspended in 2020 when they acquiesced to
Yes.
the COVID-19 lockdowns. Okay,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so there's no
Yeah.
active constitutional integrity anywhere in the Caribbean region. Hence,
Yeah.
why you now have the Caribbean prime ministers as a club called CARICOM. CARICOM has now evolved from what should have been a regional cooperative trade and governance sector into a club of private interests in
Yes.
order to be able to make as much money off of the collective Caribbean interests as possible.
Very good. And could you talk about what is happening now with CARICOM and with all of these distractions about, Secretary General? Now, we want to ask the question, what does a Secretary General has to do with anything? The price of gas or the price of cornmeal or flour? Nothing. Why are they distracting us with the reappointment? Who cares about the Secretary General who controls absolutely nothing in CARICOM? But go ahead, Mr. Corbett.
Well, we have to be cognizant of the fact that the current Secretary General of CARICOM, who was reappointed 5 months in advance of her
Hmm.
term of coming to full term, she still had 5 months left of her appointment, but she was reappointed
Yeah.
simply because she does the bidding of who controls CARICOM. And who
Hmm.
controls CARICOM? The Prime Minister of Barbados. She
Mm.
controls CARICOM.
Mm.
Why? Because the one judicial system that CARICOM has acquiesced to out of Europe and the Caribbean Court of Justice have joined forces.
Hmm.
So there's, at the end of the
But,
day, if you
but,
control
but
the legal,
the question is who controls the Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Motley? Who
she
controls
controls
her?
her, she controls herself. What her handlers are the Club of Rome,
Right,
Bank of International Settlements,
right,
and all
right.
City of London.
So she's doing the bidding of the UN. She's doing the bidding
Yeah.
of the World Economic Forum and all of these things. So this matter of the CARICOM Secretary General has nothing to do with anything.
No, of course
If
not.
we understand, and if we understand the bigger picture, so they are overwhelming us with these news, and people are and that's what I need to segue into. Or people do not want to be educated. And I'm going to be very, very blunt with this. And that is why they are going to win and will not be able to do anything. I go back to even the days of Christ. He was trying to educate the Jews what was lies ahead. They didn't want to listen. We saw the destruction of Jerusalem. They could have averted that, but they did not want to listen. And the people in this region too, they prefer the gossips. They prefer these little nonsense stories about Carla Barnett and what's happening with Mia Motley and the back and forth with Kamala Persson-Bissessor. And this is what they listen to. This is what they consume. And we're going nowhere with these sort of stories because we need to look at the big picture, which
Precisely.
in the region we're too childish that we can't see the big picture, and people who are trying to show us the big picture, we don't, because we just love the gossips. Go ahead, Mr.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you on that point,
Yeah.
Andrew. We're too consumed with the frivolity of Caribbean life, and we're not interested in looking at the geopolitical impetus
Yes.
that is barreling towards the Caribbean region like a runaway freight train.
Oh,
And
Lord.
the problem that we face in the Caribbean region is that due to colonial oppression and colonial institutions that have
Yes.
always kept us in tune with what the official narrative is, and anything that questions that is considered to be heresy.
Yes.
We find ourselves in a position where we're so dependent upon government opinion that we believe that nothing else matters. Okay, or if you go through any constituency in Barbados, and in some constituencies across the Caribbean region for that matter, you will have a general impression that everybody's just sitting down waiting on the government to do something.
Yes.
Okay. Nobody has any suggestions with regard to what they would do if they were in a position of government. Nobody has any suggestions about what they can do for their community.
Yes.
And the reason I can say that with accuracy is that when I was aspiring to represent St. Lucie, I went into the community on several occasions to ask questions. What do you think about a person such as myself representing your community for the first time in Barbados? Because I am a white Barbadian, and everyone that has gone before me have been black Barbadians. What do you think about a white Barbadian representing your community? And the overwhelming answer was, we have no problem with you representing our community. But we want to see what government is going to do about it. We want to see what government is going to do about it. Wow. In other words, they're telling me that I will be at the mercy of the
government.
Of the government.
Yeah, whatever her opinion of you is.
Precisely. Yeah. So if you have a population that is waiting on government opinion, you're not doing anything.
And not only the opinion of governments, but the opinion of so-called experts. So whatever the experts say, that stands. You don't have a mind of your own, and this is what we find ourselves doing. So when you say, for example, when I challenge the economy of Jamaica, they tell me, they rebut by saying the IMF says that it is a progressive economy. And this is what we get. This is the nonsense that is coming out of the Caribbean. So I don't see us, and I'm going to have to go with prophecy, because God is the one who sees, and not that he wants the society to operate in the way it is, but he foresees that's exactly how we were going to behave, and that nothing is going to be able to be done.
I can agree
Education-wise, our education system is now rotten to the core. It's now more Americanized than whatever. So we are just moving along with getting a job and just moving on.
Well, the thing is, I want to be very clear about something. I am not discounting prophecy at any stage or at any point. Prophecy has its place. However, how you interpret what is prophecy and what is actually reality because of inaction and the inability to see beyond your nose is another question. Okay.
Well, that's prophecy.
If you are satisfied, if the people of the Caribbean are satisfied by being a procrastination entity, then obviously prophecy will be something that will be held on to as the so-called saving grace. However, if we interpret prophecy based upon faith in action, we can make a complete difference, because we have the collective spiritual power to bring about meaningful change.
if we're doing it according to truth. Again, many people are doing things. So there are people who are doing things and they will tell you that they're doing things, but they're not doing things the right way because they're
Exactly.
not cemented in truth. And that's the
Exactly.
whole thing. And I was reading an article this morning that from Haiti, and in which he was talking about what the US is doing there. And he's saying if we are not cemented in the truth about the empire, then all of what we're doing is in vain. And I
Exactly.
think that that is what is bedeviling us now. There are people doing things, there are lots of people with podcasts, as you can see. There are people doing, and on the grounds doing the best that they can do. But at the same time, some people are also misguided. A lot of people are misguided in terms
Yes.
of what is really happening behind the scenes. They're just responding to what they're seeing, and that this is so, and but well, that's for another conversation, prophecy versus
Yes. Exactly.
real world life. But let's go back now to the whole matter of the economy. Um, I don't see if we are going to have this, as you're saying, oil prices might go up to $200 and beyond. How are we going to be able to deal economically when Barbados, Jamaica are under the throes of IMF and perhaps some other Caribbean countries? How are we going to be able to deal with this sort of, crisis, energy crisis?
Well, let's cast ourselves back to 1976 when the
Hmm.
first oil crisis hit the Caribbean region.
Yes.
Yes, our populations were much smaller then, and we didn't have a lot of vehicles on the road. We had more
Hmm.
public service vehicles rather
Correct.
than privately owned cars.
Yeah.
1976 was a year where, because there was a fuel crisis, and at the end of the day, the expansion of global trade and global industry was nowhere near what it is today.
Hmm. Hmm.
The interest of the global community in commerce and industry was not where it is today.
Yes.
Today, in 2026, we have the global economy can only operate on hydrocarbons.
Mm.
It cannot operate on anything else. In
Right.
1976, there was a much smaller component of industry and commerce operating on hydrocarbons.
Right.
Yes, the United States of America was accelerating. It had just
Hmm.
exited
Industrialized. Hmm.
the Vietnam War, which had
Hmm.
consumed massive amounts of hydrocarbons, and
Hmm.
had left the economy of the United States in ruins.
In shambles. Yeah.
Hence, why when the fuel crisis of 1976 hit,
Hmm.
everybody thought it was going to be a regional disaster. It
Hmm.
didn't turn out to be that, simply
Hmm.
because we were still small enough and flexible enough to use sailboats as well as other things to trade with ourselves. We were still trading with ourselves. In 1976, there were not 40-foot containers and container ships. What killed Caribbean trade after the fuel crisis is when 1978 and 1980, the Caribbean region was introduced to trade export units, a 40-foot or 20-foot container. Everything, if you're shipping a box of shoes to Trinidad, you have to put it in a 40-foot container. That
Mm.
killed Caribbean intra-regional trade in one. Bang, done.
Yeah, but I don't
Now,
know if I would. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead for
now,
it.
the reason I say that is this. That is something that was a side effect of the fuel crisis of
Hmm.
1976.
Correct.
In today's world, where regional communication and transportation depends on aircraft as well as trade with vessels, hydrocarbons are absolutely essential for one small island to actually be able to make itself a living
Hmm.
by being able to have tourism coming to its shores and to be able to bring some form of income in via the tourism industry.
Hmm.
We cannot sustain Caribbean independence from tourism. We can't do it. We cannot rely on someone to be sending tourism to us. We ourselves now have to do intra-regional tourism, but that can't happen if we can't use hydrocarbons, we can't fly, we can't go on a boat or anything like that. Okay, so what do we do? What we do is that we start making deals with the people that can supply us. So instead of relying on the United States of America Each Caribbean country needs to take its foreign ministry and sit down and have a very clear, concise discussion. Gentlemen, we are going to be in a situation where we can no longer trust or rely upon the United States of America to supply our hydrocarbons for the sustainment of our industries. We have to make a decision today with regard to looking at the countries that can supply us with refined hydrocarbons.
Mhm.
That means going to
Yes.
Malaysia, Singapore, Brunei, these Southeast Asian countries that are exporting oil. Okay,
Mhm.
the government of Indonesia is more than willing to export oil into the Caribbean region. How do we know that? Because when we were doing the Free Winds Caribbean Food Security and Regional Development Initiative, we wanted to expand Free Winds logistics into the Far East
Mhm.
so that we could have a logistics chain from the Far East across the Pacific Ocean to the Panama Canal and into the Caribbean region, which would facilitate the ability for similar foodstuffs to be able to transit it between the Caribbean and Indonesia. Indonesia grows everything that Barbados and the Caribbean grows.
Mhm.
If you've ever been to Indonesia, you see the same crops in the fields,
Mhm.
identical. Why? Because we lie on the same latitudes. Okay, we lie on the same latitudes. Just because they're in the Pacific Ocean doesn't mean anything. But the reason for that being is that, and one of those agreements were, we signed a memorandum of understanding with the government of Indonesia that they would supply us with hydrocarbons from Indonesia.
Mhm.
We also sat
Mhm.
down and had discussions with the foreign minister of Malaysia and the CEO of Petronas oil company. He said, if you're willing to come into the Far East, set up a company here in Malaysia, and we will facilitate. We
Okay,
have
but
to be able to
yes.
make the decisions.
Yes, and those, but we're not independent, as you and I have all, we've come to that sort of
Yeah.
conclusion that we are not independent sovereign countries. How are you going to ward off the aggression, as you've suggested? Trump is now harping back to the Monroe Doctrine. They control the Western Hemisphere. We've seen what they've done to Venezuela. In fact, today, from the anti-war, website, I was reading an article in which they say Cuba is next, and he's going to kidnap presidents in the same way that he kidnapped Maduro. How are we going to ward off this sort of presence of the United States and this aggression, this hostility that they have toward all countries in the region?
Well, the thing is, bringing in oil tanker with diesel and gasoline fuel, that's just like importing food. But the point is, you cannot import food if your industries that create employment for your population are idle. If your industry shut down, if your ability to empower transportation, if your farming can't farm because there's no diesel fuel, if your agro processing can't function because there's no electricity, how are you going to import food? What are you going to pay for it with? So you still have to
Yeah,
import the hydrocarbons. So hydrocarbon importation as a single vessel once a month coming from the Far East is just like importing food. It doesn't
yeah,
have to get U.S. permission to do that.
yeah.
Okay.
But that's what they're okay. Doesn't Cuba have to get U.S. permission to get oil in its
No,
country? But,
no,
but that
no,
is what
no,
we're
no,
seeing
no, no,
happening.
no, no,
Well, that is
no,
what is
no.
happening, Fred. That is what is happening right now.
Three Russian oil tankers are just pulled into
One
Cuba.
vessel went there, but
No,
we
three.
we had
There's three.
well, or three, yeah.
There's
But
three.
but at the permission of the United States.
No, no,
Had the
no,
United
no,
States not permitted them, they could not
no,
have gone. They couldn't have done it.
no, no, no,
That
no, no.
that is what I am reading. Maybe you're
Well,
reading
that's
something.
what you're reading that in the
Yeah,
mainstream media. But I'll tell you the reason why I'm disagreeing with you.
but
The reason
everything we
that
get
I'm
come from the media, by the way.
right. The reason that I'm disagreeing with regard to the importation of hydrocarbons into Cuba is
Mhm.
that the Russian government, as well as the Chinese government, have a strategic economic agreement with Cuba for such eventualities. The Russian government told the United States government, we are going to be sending hydrocarbon fuels to Cuba on three vessels. The first arrived 2 weeks ago. The second and the third are about to arrive either yesterday or today. Okay. The United States of America has no control over a country's economic cooperative development agreements. They have
I
no
don't
control
believe
over
that.
that.
Well,
And they
we
cannot,
they
and,
shouldn't. They
and,
shouldn't, but
and
they do.
listen carefully, listen carefully. They have no jurisdiction over a Russian flagged vessel that is defended by the Russian military. What a lot of people don't know is that all three of those oil tankers were escorted across the Caribbean region by a Russian submarine.
Mhm.
Aha.
Yeah,
Big difference.
what we're seeing, I'm not sure what you are seeing, but what I am seeing, and a lot of other commentators are seeing, is that the whole international law infrastructure has been, has gone to thin air. It has been destroyed. Trump has destroyed all of that. So what you're saying that should not happen versus what is happening are two distinct things. That's what we see in we saw in Venezuela. That Venezuela should be able to have economic relationship with Iran before Iran was attacked, and also with Russia and any other state that it wanted to do business with. But the U.S. told them no. And at one time we saw where they even closed down the airspace there in Venezuela. The United States went there and took out a sitting president, and now suggesting that they're going to do the same thing to Cuba. So what the United States should not do, and what they're doing are two different things. And are we talking the same
Well,
language?
you have to look very carefully at one very important denominator in the Venezuela issue. The Venezuela government was penetrated by the Israeli Likud party as far back as 2010. Okay? The Likud party of Israel was running Venezuela and making sure that everything that Maduro did was to their liking. Okay? Even down to all of Maduro's bodyguards, who were Cuban and were trained by Mossad. Hence why all of them were killed. Dead men tell no tales. Okay? At the end of the day, the Likud party from Israel controlled Venezuela up until the point of even today, much more so even today, simply because they had to get in there to corrupt the situation so that Maduro could be kidnapped or could be forcibly extradited. I'm not saying that the same thing can't happen in Cuba, but what I will tell you is this. If the United States of America carries out that operation in Cuba, you will have a very similar situation happen as what is happening in Iran. But this time, you would have stepped directly into the camp of the Russians, because Russia actually has a larger contingent of its government in Cuba. All right?
And in
Russia
Venezuela.
is not going to allow that to happen. Okay? And if it does happen, the United States of America will find itself embroiled in a situation that it will fight that's even worse than Iran, because it will be right next door and they'll no longer have any control over what Russia does, simply because Russia is not going to stand idly by and see an ally since 1960, since 1950, 1959, go down the tubes simply because of some deranged baboon from Barbaria. Okay? At the end of the day, the most important thing that you have to understand is that Russia's geopolitical interests and its economic cooperative development agreements with Cuba and also with China, Cuba's agreements with China, China's Belt and Road, are of far more geopolitical importance for Cuba than signing agreements with America. The president of Cuba has said he has agreed to discuss the situation with the United States of America, in the best interest of the Cuban diaspora, which is living in the United States of America, simply because if he does not engage,
you have two windows.
Hang on.
You have two windows open. You have two windows open. Sorry, you have two windows open, so it might be impacting your delivery. I'm seeing two windows open from your side.
I don't have.
Not sure if you see it.
I only have one window open here.
Yeah, on mine it's reflecting too, and it seems to be affecting your delivery.
Anyway,
but go ahead.
The most important thing is this. The Cuban president is willing to discuss the situation in Cuba with the United States of America. And the reason for that is this. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, has long wanted to overthrow the government in Cuba based upon the fact that his family was originally from Cuba and so on, and he has this as his own personal vendetta to be able to achieve. Now, the reason that the president of Cuba is willing to speak to the United States of America is because of the very large Cuban diaspora that could be very negatively impacted in the United States of America if Trump decides to deport all of them. It would be a humanitarian disaster for Cuba because Cuba does not have the physical capacity to take in 5 million more of its citizens. It doesn't have it. If you take 5 million people and deport them into Cuba within a month or within 6 months, Cuba will definitely have a serious humanitarian problem on its hands. There's not enough housing. There's not enough situation. There's not enough food. There's no electricity. And Russia and China are stepping in to take care of that situation because they are fully aware of the fact that Donald Trump could mobilize the National Guard against all Cuban nationals in America, whether they're citizens or not, and deport them. This is the reason why the Cuban Prime Minister is willing to speak to the United States of America in order to bring about a rationale for what Cuba's position is going to be going forward. The most important thing we have to remember is that Cuba's position with regard to any kind of acquiescence to U.S. The demands is temporary. Donald Trump will no longer be president of the United States of America in less than 2 years.
Yeah, okay. but both parties are on the same page.
Let me explain. With the departure of Donald Trump, the situation is going to change in America, where America is going to be under civil war. Cuba does not have to worry after that.
How do you know that? How do you know America will be under civil war?
Andrew, the writing is on the wall. You don't.
Yeah, but it might be. We can't say of the fact that after immediate, because I've heard about that for a long time.
Watch it.
Just watch even after, even during the financial collapse, there's going to be civil war. I'm not saying it will not eventually happen, and I'm saying that we have to be careful of giving time and saying time.
It's going to happen sooner than you think. Because if you look at the geopolitical situation that's happening in the United States of America at the moment, Donald Trump has successfully, under the stewardship of the Zionist cabal, taken the United States of America to the point where the entire U.S. hegemony everywhere in the world is now under question. They're being evicted from the Middle East. There's no question about that right now. They're being evicted permanently from the Middle East. The situation in Iran will not change until America leaves the Middle East. Okay?
I wanted to ask you a question though, Fred. You mentioned that in Venezuela, the Likud party, the Party of Israel, controlled the Maduro government. Now, if that is true, based on what you've said, why is it then that the United States want to take him out when the Likud party also, according to you, also controls the United States? So what's the rationale for taking out somebody who the same person controls?
One word.
I don't think. Yeah.
One word. Optics. You have to be able to be seen to be doing something. Because if Donald Trump, as president of the United States of America, goes and carries out a precise military operation to remove a head of state, it brings plausible deniability to anybody else who may have been involved.
I got you. So you're saying that they're setting the standard for what is going to happen to other parts of the world. Okay. So if that is the case, and you're right, I don't believe the Likud party controls the US, but I believe what you're saying in terms of the fact that that could be the standard they're setting. So if that is the standard, how is Cuba going to push back? How is Jamaica, how is Barbados or Trinidad going to push back from that sort of standard?
Well, we are too small. We're too small to push back on our own. And we don't have enough unity in CARICOM to be able to take a stand against anything, because CARICOM has been corrupted as a honeypot for political entities. Okay?
Yes.
CARICOM is where political parties go to in order to be able to get funding for themselves. This is what CARICOM has been. And the reason that CARICOM has become the honeypot for political entities is because it's a very easy way to control the political entity. So if you have a prime minister or a group of ministers in the country who want to get involved in a project and so on and use it to be able to launder a bit of money to get some credit for themselves and so on and be able to feather their own nest, they go to CARICOM with a proposal. They go to a CARICOM heads of state meeting and so on. They put their proposal in place. The Caribbean Development Bank gets involved, then so on and so forth, and a certain amount of money is allocated. And token example is put in place and so on. And the rest of the money is squandered. That's how it works. Okay.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
it benefits the United States of America for this to keep on happening because it allows them absolute control over those entities. They will
Hmm.
do our bidding, or we can just put a simple article in the New York Times and boom, you're done.
Yes, 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 correct. Now, let us look at what is your opinion, what is your impression of a global infrastructure, a global government infrastructure. And when we often talk about the one world government. I don't believe there's going to be a one world government because all people won't come unite suddenly and whatever. We always have differences. But I think that they're just at the COVID pandemic, we're going to have a system of one world governance, which is different from a one world government. If that is the case, which I believe is they're putting in place, are we childishly looking at what is the Iraq, the conflict, the supposed conflict between Iran and the United States and Iran and Cuba, or are we seeing, just like the pandemic, a sort of coming together of financial institutions, political institutions, and everything, and we need to move beyond this little conflict between what Trinidad is doing or what Cuba is doing and the United States, and look at how these leaders, as you have said with the whole optics in Venezuela, are sort of creating this sort of conflict, engineered conflicts to divide us and then control us. What is your take on that matter?
Well, I agree with you to a point, but you also have to understand that there's a wider agenda with regard to resource management and control, global
Always,
resource management and control,
always.
because the technocracy agenda, where the North American technate and the Eastern Asian, or the East Asia and West Asia technates and so on, which is some people in prophecy would say this is the coming together of the kingdoms, 10 kingdoms. At the end of the day, the most important thing to remember here is that the global governance structure cannot function unless the resources that drive that are under a single
Right.
hegemonic control. Hence, you have the war in Iran,
Yes.
which has nothing to do with nuclear enrichment or a nuclear weapon or anything like that. This is resource
Correct.
management and control. Okay? Iran has chosen the sovereign path where it will defend its sovereignty to the last dying breath. And the only way that Iran would potentially capitulate is if the United States of America launched an all-out thermonuclear war against Iran. However, because Iran is 1.65 million square kilometers, nor million square miles, you will only destroy Iran's cities that are above ground. You will not touch the management and the governing infrastructure that is below ground. Now, if you've ever been to Iran, you can actually drive past these places that are below ground, and the taxi driver coming in from the airport will possibly point out for, depending on which city you go to. In Isfahan, okay, on the way in from the airport, you actually pass the entrance to a road to one of these underground cities. Okay, now, what would thermonuclear war do to the entire global economy? It would make global one world governance irrelevant because there would be nobody left to govern. Okay? So the one world governance that people talk about, in my honest opinion, is going to be a long, drawn out shambles of separate little technates, everybody trying to do their own thing and somehow coordinating through satellite connectivity and so on. It's not going to be one governance or one world governance. It's going to be people doing precisely what they're doing now, where I have a Windows system that is running my computer, and I can talk to you in the Dominican Republic, and I can talk to somebody else in Guyana at the same time. I'm doing my thing, you're doing your thing. That's precisely how it's going to have to work, because there's not a single one governance structure that does not apply or does not run on two very important things. And those are hydrocarbons and the electronic spectrum of the internet. No
Yeah,
internet, no
I would
hydrocarbons, done.
I would say that, well, I would say that if, well, I wouldn't probably even say that because I believe in prophecy. But I would say that if, one, I wasn't aware of prophecy. Secondly, if COVID had not happened. What we saw in COVID, none whether it's China, and well, the whole virus was China collaborated with the United States,
Yeah.
right? All of our governments did the same thing. Not Iran, not China, not Russia. All of them acceded to the same thing the United States was doing, right? That was, I would say, a one world governance junior 1.0, 1.0, that the entire world, we can't unite to do anything. This world cannot unite even for peace. We cannot unite to do anything. But we were all united around a so-called virus. So I see that that is what they're putting in place, whether the climate change is going to create that or whatever an act of terrorism, whatever is going to happen, all governments, and I think the climate change could be one, where they're going to unite around that energy crisis. And that is how we are going to find ourselves in that. Not a one world government, but a one world system of governance where everybody is acceding to the same thing.
Well, I agree with that. And then, like I said, that's one of the reasons why the resource management and control is an absolute for these people. Because if they don't control the means to run industry, to build what they want, and if they don't control the electronic spectrum, if they don't control space, then they don't control the earth at all. And the thing is, their inability right now to even get the internet to run properly only goes to prove that they're a long way away from one world government.
Yeah, your other connection is echoing, and that is what is creating the problem there. You have two system on the platform. So if you could get one off, then you would be a little bit more fluent in your pronouncements.
I don't have anything else open here. So.
Hello? Yeah. So Fred. Yeah. There's something else definitely on the screen, but you probably can't get it off. But go ahead. But it's affecting your delivery.
Let me see what else is. I don't have anything else open. Anyway.
Okay. Well, go ahead. Yeah, we're almost ending the call. So go ahead, Fred.
So what we're seeing is that we're seeing a situation develop where in the Middle East you have the one country that has the ability to control and hold the global economy to ransom. Mm-hmm. Not that it is doing it with malice. It is doing it for survival. Mm-hmm. Okay? Iran doesn't have to win this war, this particular war. It has won the first round, and it won the second round. The third round that is coming, nobody knows what will happen. But I can guarantee you this, is that the Persian Empire of 5,000 years of absolute resistance and rule will not bow to Western control. And we have a situation that is going to develop where one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to see the complete destruction of Israel, the annihilation of Israel, and the withdrawal of the United States of America from the Middle East, or nuclear war. I believe it's going to be a combination of the two. That's just my opinion. Okay? I believe the United States of America will withdraw from the Middle East, and Israel will make the stupid, informed decision to attack Iran with their thermonuclear weapons and suffer the consequences as a result, because Russia will take Israel off the map.
Mm-hmm. Now, if we have a system like the World Economic Forum, which all of these powers are also a part of, the United Nations, which are all of these so-called powers that were, Iran perhaps with the exception of Iran, form the members of the UN Security Council. And oftentimes we see a lot of contradictory responses on these UN Security Council and so forth. How can we trust these people? And how do we say who is winning from who is not winning? Because at the end of the day, we are not winning. And certainly the people of Iran are also not winning. How are we going to, people will say, for example, like in Cuba, that the Cuban Revolution was this great revolution and it won against US imperialism. But what about the people? The leaders, they're able to eat, I'm sure, sumptuous meals, healthy meals. What about the people who are suffering? We have to look beyond what our leaders are doing and ask, are they really fighting on our behalf? Or are they fighting, as you have said, and I have said also, for scarce resources, for spoils and scarce resources. We know the United States is the most belligerent of all of them because it has the military power. And if Iran had it, and if Russia had the military power of that of the United States, they too would be doing the same thing. They want world control, and they are operating. And who is going to be the strongest at the end of the day to control the world? But it's not in our interest. And that is what I'm helping people to understand, that at the end of the day, we lose, they win. As with COVID, we lost, they won.
Well, I will agree with you on a couple of points there, and I don't agree with the totalitarian situation of losing, because I know that we have the ability to come together and bring about serious change in our own communities. That is a given.
Why don't we come together now and bring about serious change?
Right. So the situation is this: the Caribbean region is going to be faced with a situation in the very near future with regard to energy rationing and loss of revenue and so on because of not being able to have access to hydrocarbons. And there is none more pressing time than now to bring the Caribbean together so that we are united as a region with regard to our survival. Simply because if we are going to be controlled in another form other than a pandemic via energy, are we going to allow the same people that conned us into acquiescing to their demands? Are we going to allow them now to take the very last ability of us to be able to do anything? Or are we going to make inroads? Are we going to make inroads into making things happen for ourselves?
Yes, we're going to allow them. You know why we're going to allow them? Because, as you said, we opened up the conversation by saying that people rely on government for information. So they're telling us already that the war in the Middle East is what is causing, which to some extent is true, is responsible for the oil prices. In order to conserve on the amount of money that government has to spend on oil, then we have to be locked down. So people are already saying that. I see comments saying, please be reminded that there's a war in the Middle East. The government is doing its best. Just like COVID, the government is doing its best to control a virus. So they're going to go with it. They're going to go with the agenda.
Yeah, it's a sad situation, but the way forward for the Caribbean, in my opinion, is to bring about the best possible practical-minded individuals in the region to look at solutions that can be implemented as quickly as possible. And as I said to a friend of mine day before yesterday, my company is at the disposal of anybody who would like to sit down and look at these solutions. We have a portfolio of solutions for the Caribbean region that took us 10 years of research to come to conclusive determination. And there are documents and proposals for every single Caribbean country in order to be able to completely reverse the years of colonial oppression and usury nonsense that has taken place in the region. Simply because with the correct infrastructure and the correct management levels, based upon the correct financial inputs, we in the Caribbean region can be a prosperous region. We can completely be a contributor to a new paradigm on the global stage. Okay?
I'm sure that, the Iranians say that, the Syrians said that, all of the people in the different parts of the world said that, and, and their program was disrupted back because of greed, and this whole imperial sort of underpinnings that we see in the United States. So, I think we have to just speak, while we want to be, not given to skepticism and pessimism, we've also got to be practical. with what we're working. What cards are we playing with? And right now we're playing with some hostile. And talk about CARICOM and Mrs. Person Besesser. What is your impression of what she's doing with the whole matter of the summit of the shields of the Americas the other day with Trump? So we're not united. At this point, I think we're probably more divided than we're united. I think we're heading back into the decade of the 1970s, 80s in CARICOM. So what is your impression of what she's doing and the fact that she is siding with Trump? And she says that, in fact, I think in Trinidad now they have the people there, the Hezbollahs there, they've made some terrorist laws as what they have in the United States against, some of these Muslims, whether it's a Hezbollah and another group. What do you think is going to happen to the Caribbean when we have a prime minister so openly siding with the imperialist undertakings of the Donald Trump administration?
Well, to be quite honest with you, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago is following a prepared script, and she's following a chart of a course of action that works in the best interest of Trinidad to be able to bring Trinidad out of the sewer pit that the PNM administration placed it. To be quite honest with you, there is no other choice for her to do what she's doing at the behest of the United States of America, simply because Trinidad and Tobago would become a failed state if the United States of America did not intervene with her election. Okay?
Wow.
Because when you look at the reality on the ground, the Keith Rowley administration had put Trinidad and Tobago in a precarious position of virtually becoming insolvent in less than 3 months. Trinidad would have been insolvent in 3 months if Kamala did not win the election.
Yes.
Now, imagine Trinidad and Tobago of 1.6 million people virtually declaring bankruptcy with the level of intellect and the level of industry and manufacturing that supports many Caribbean countries. Many products that are manufactured in Trinidad and Tobago are on Caribbean supermarket shelves.
Yeah, because that was the sort of agreement, so
Right.
that they had to do it because we could do it ourselves. They're not more competent than any person in the Caribbean.
The most important thing is that Trinidad's manufacturing base would have been placed significantly at risk had not the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago taken the action that she did, simply because the United States of America could have walked away. But Kamala did it in the best interest of the Caribbean community, simply because she recognized that 80% of the Caribbean small island states depended on Trinidad's export capability in food, as well as other industries and so on, for their sustainment. If Trinidad, let's look at this scenario. If Trinidad and Tobago, for some inexplicable reason, were to be taken offline completely, do you know what would happen to all of the small islands in the Caribbean region?
But why would it be taken offline? Why would it be taken offline?
I'm just saying hypothetically. You remove Trinidad and Tobago from the ability to export its food products, its industries, and various other things and so on from the Caribbean community. You will have absolute economic fiasco across the region. Trinidad is the linchpin that keeps Caribbean small islands alive. There is no question about that. There's no one that can argue that point negatively. Caribbean small island states depend on Trinidad for food products, for industry supply, and various other things like that.
And the relationship is reciprocal, right? Because without them to Trinidad and without this sort of us buying their products, they would not be as wealthy as they are. So it comes from both sides. They just wouldn't be as wealthy, especially with this global market now that we have and how competitive it is. I think that they benefit from the relationship with CARICOM. If they should go away now, they are going to find themselves in some serious problems. Well, so let's talk about the reciprocity and not just look at the fact that that's what they're doing.
I agree with you 100%, but the point is that the small island states that contribute to Trinidad and Tobago contribute more in actual agricultural produce than
Mm-hmm.
anything else. So
Yes.
when you have a little island like Grenada that
Mm-hmm.
takes 65% of its agricultural produce and exports it to Trinidad and receives processed products in return,
Yes.
that is what you call reciprocity. Okay,
Yes.
the most
Yes.
important thing for all Caribbean countries to recognize is that if we continue to build real trade between
Mm-hmm.
our nations, we will be in a
Yes.
far better position to expand our operations beyond the Caribbean rather
Mm-hmm.
than spending time fighting with one another about who does what or who didn't do that. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're spending
Uh,
too much time
yeah.
arguing.
We do. And I'm wondering, as I've said to you, is it that they want to distract us while behind the scenes they are just trying to destroy us? I really don't know. Because to be frank with you, at one point we might say theoretically it seems like Mrs. Purcell Bessessor wants to help Trinidad, wants to build, but another angle, you are destroying the relationship with your brothers and your sisters. And some of the things that they're doing now in public could have been averted. All of this, like let us say the discussion that you sent me, the video that you sent me last night, and this gentleman was talking about the fact that 5 months the lady was she had to demit off before her appointment was finished, and then they reappointed her and all of that. These things could have been done secretly. It didn't have to come out in the public and how she's behaving. Why is it also that Trinidad and Tobago did not scream, as I was asking you, the same day when, according to him, they weren't invited at the plenary session? Why didn't they from then? Why did Mrs. Kamala Purcell Bessessor say, look, we weren't invited, we were discriminated against? All of what is happening with her are just double talk, and something is wrong with Trinidad and Tobago. Something is wrong, and I'm not sure if who what if Miss Purcell Bessessor is even awake. Something is wrong, and I think that she needs to be awake, and somebody needs to wake her up, because what she's doing might end up, particularly siding with the United States, destroy that twin republic, than build it. And I think that if she continues on this path, it is going to destroy, without a doubt. It is
Well,
going to destroy.
I'm not privy to what goes on behind the scenes there in Trinidad and Tobago. But what I can say is this: is that I agree with the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago in limiting the involvement of Trinidad and Tobago in CARICOM at this particular point in time.
Why?
Because what CARICOM has actually engaged in has placed CARICOM in the position of being a club
Mm-hmm.
of wrongdoing.
In
Okay,
what are
the
they doing that is?
Caribbean countries, and the person responsible for it. There's one person responsible for CARICOM becoming that. That is the
Okay.
Prime Minister of Barbados. The Prime Minister of Barbados has treated CARICOM as her own personal organization that is
Mm-hmm.
backed by the Caribbean Court of Justice, which is again her brainchild, and
Mm-hmm.
financed by the people who benefit the most from it. CARICOM
Mm-hmm.
has become a place where Caribbean prime ministers have now joined a club where they can conspire to do whatever they wish, and the
Mm-hmm.
region can do nothing about their decisions because they're hiding behind CARICOM and using it as a diaphanous leaf for illicit and illegal activity. This is the facts. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
There is no one that can come to anybody on any forum now and say that this is not the case because the evidence proves otherwise.
Yes.
CARICOM,
Well,
as
I
I've
could.
said
Yeah.
before, CARICOM,
Mm-hmm.
as I
Mm-hmm.
have said before, should have been shut down a long time ago. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
CARICOM and CARIGON ever since. The
Mm-hmm.
most important thing is that it has now morphed into a personalized racketeering entity.
Mm-hmm.
That's what is happening with CARICOM. And
Mm-hmm.
to her credit, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago will not have a part of it. Now, I'm not saying that everything that she is doing is correct. I don't know enough about what has gone on behind the scenes in Trinidad and Tobago to be able to pronounce upon that. But the most important thing is I understand CARICOM and I understand the danger that CARICOM poses to being able to further divide the Caribbean region. CARICOM is an
Yes.
instrument of division. It is not an
Yes.
instrument of unity.
Yes. And I agree 100% with you on some of the points and most of the points that you've made. But you say, show me your friend and I'll tell you who you are.
Yes,
And to
exactly.
side with the United States and suggest that you are going to unify CARICOM is a dumb sort of
Never
action to
happened.
take. It's almost
Never
like that
happened.
somebody's a gunman and I'm going to side with, organized
Yeah.
crime to, that sort of thing is nonsense. If
Yeah.
she were siding with principled people, then perhaps I would say, you have a point. But she's siding with somebody who is even more dangerous in many ways than CARICOM. And
Yeah.
also, we can look at Congress and say Congress is also just ineffective and dividing the United States citizens right now and corrupt to the core.
Exactly.
So what is she? Who is she siding with? Who are her friends? Donald Trump, the United States military-industrial complex that has killed hundreds of thousands of people around the world, push drugs and the CIA and all of that stuff. Is this her are these her new friends now and should be the friends of the Caribbean? These are the questions that we have to ask her and Trinidadians should be asking her. Why these people? It's just like the Pope, criticizing Trump and suggesting that he's for peace. Who is this Pope to tell Trump that he's for peace when we know who the Pope is and what he represents? It's the same thing that we're seeing happening in CARICOM, and people are going to say, "Oh yes, the Pope is a man of peace, and he wants peace. He wants the end of the Iraq War." But do they really understand who the Pope is and what his agenda for the world is?
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
most people don't know.
No.
And that is what people in Trinidad and Tobago also. And even when I'm making my videos, they think the United States is this great, partner. We have to partner with the United States because they're going to help us help you. Do you see what they're happening? Do you see what they're doing in the world? It's almost like we're living in a fairyland. I don't know.
Yes.
But I agree with you that CARICOM does need some sort of, it needs evolution. It needs some sort of discipline. It needs some sort of democratic principles because they just do things and tell us that we need to do that and no discussion, no debates, no nothing. So yeah, I agree with Mrs. Kamala, personal business. And I did say that in several of my videos. I agree with her that we need to be restructured, but not in the way that she's doing it.
Well, I think her idea of restructuring is actually where Trinidad benefits the most. I mean, any prime minister would want their country to benefit from any kind of restructuring of CARICOM.
Absolutely.
However, it is very difficult to restructure an entity that that has a history of division. You cannot integrate divided nations. It's not possible. Okay, it's not possible to integrate divided nations.
Wow. So Mr. Corbett, though, when you just say that's a very strong statement you're making, and I agree with you to a great extent. But so I think that essentially we're saying that this world also doesn't have a future because this world is divided, and this world is corrupt. How can we? And that's why prophecy is right. That is why prophecy is right. There's absolutely nothing. No, this world has to be restructured. And right now, based on what we're seeing, every element is so corrupt that I'm not sure the system, just like slavery, has to go down. The system cannot be reformed.
No, I totally agree. And when it comes to CARICOM, I believe that the restructuring of CARICOM can only be achieved by its complete disbandment and its resurgence under a new understanding based upon the sovereignty of Caribbean countries and their contributions to a progressive global environment. The thing is, for many years, people have used CARICOM as the Caribbean community. But if they looked at the history of the Federation and then CARICOM, the CARICOM actually means Caribbean America's Resource Integration Community.
You're right.
Because that's all you're doing. Because that's all that has happened. Okay?
Yes. And that's why I can't blame, as much as I speak out against Mia Motley, I can't blame her because she doesn't really drive the car. She's just at the wheels, well, probably spinning the steering wheel, but she's not the one responsible for the
No,
engine of the car, So
no.
she is just like not as all of this, thing that we lay at her feet. She's really not any great, weight, if you will.
She's
And
just one
even
of
she,
those.
yeah, she's
Yeah,
just one of us. Yeah,
yeah,
she's just one of us.
she's just a puppet behind the scenes, just pulling
Absolutely,
that.
absolutely. How do we reclaim before we go? How do we reclaim? Well, you said it's impossible. So what? We're small states, as you're saying. We're tiny states. So how are we going to maneuver through this very challenging geopolitical waters if we can't unite?
Well, I think that unity will come
Mm-hmm.
when Caribbean states realize that the ability to, or they see a Caribbean state make inroads and meaningful economic development and cooperative partnerships with Asian countries.
Mm.
I believe that Caribbean countries should be holding um, very close discussions in their foreign ministries with
Mm-hmm.
regard to looking at organizations um, that are more amenable to
Mm-hmm.
promoting sovereignty of Caribbean countries or small island developing state sovereignty. And one of the countries that, or one country that has been very open to assisting the Caribbean countries and so on is Malaysia and Singapore.
Yes.
Those two countries
Yes.
have done a tremendous amount in being
Mm-hmm.
able to point the direction for Caribbean countries to follow and their structures and their geopolitical understanding of the Caribbean region. Not only
Mm-hmm.
that, but the ability for those two countries in the Far East to contribute to GDP earnings of the Caribbean region by supporting the Caribbean region in trade agreements and so on. Now,
Mm-hmm.
you will say, well, how does that we're already doing a tremendous amount of trade with China? Yes, fine. China
Mm-hmm.
also helps Caribbean countries, but
Mm-hmm.
the Chinese agendas tend to be somewhat questionable unless you're doing something that is of your own indigenous origin. If you're trying to use
Mm-hmm.
something that they've had the idea to do, you'll never get anywhere. They'll do it and they'll run it and you get nothing. Whereas if the
Yes.
Caribbean countries can sit down and look carefully at their own operational structure as a nation, what do we do or what can we do that is indigenous to us that we can seek financial assistance and so on and make it benefit a particular investor that may come in from the Far East and so on. Singapore and Malaysia have institutions that can help Caribbean nations move forward in the global trade markets, as well as energy, um, manufacturing. The connection to the Caribbean region has never been done with the Far East. We do not have direct flights from Jakarta to the Caribbean. We do not have direct
Mm-hmm.
flights from Kuala Lumpur to the Caribbean. We don't have direct
Mm-hmm.
flights from Singapore to the Caribbean. All of these things make the Caribbean region a more prosperous region when you can sit down and have a diverse portfolio of offerings to a country such as Malaysia or Singapore and say, gentlemen, we understand what you all are doing here and we'd like it
Yes.
very much. We would like to be able to utilize some of what your education can be, or education model as well. Singapore has a fantastic education model.
Mm-hmm.
At the end
It
of the day,
does.
there's some things that we can take from the Middle East, from the Far East countries, Malaysia and Singapore, the two of the most important, in my opinion, that we can bring to the Caribbean region, and we can make these things work quite successfully if we are willing to put in the time and the effort. But you
Mm-hmm.
cannot get a Caribbean government to come in or make a commitment to anything if they're only looking for to do something within 4 years. It has to be far
Mm-hmm.
more strategic in nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's look at some of the commentaries before we go, Mr. Corbyn. Oh,
Sure.
at that time, Trump wasn't president, so let's just well, that was the Let me see if she is. Okay, which European country is Fred talking? It's Fred really from? Or maybe they're asking your descendant. Maybe are you of Scottish?
No,
Whatever. Is that what you get? That's what the project.
no, the first member of my family arrived from Ireland and Barbados in 1685. I'm Irish.
Okay, good, good. You do look. Yes, yes, yes. You're Irish. You do look Irish. Little England is Barbados. What would you
Yeah,
say
that's what we
about
call that.
that?
Yeah,
Barbados is
well,
Little England.
yeah, Barbados has the nickname of Little England.
Yes, 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 yes. So that is. Let me see if I can see some others that I didn't see that there were so many comments here. Sorry about that, guys. I did not see that there were so many. Another live. Yes, we have another live. And greetings from St. Lucia. Good evening, good night. We have good evening, everyone. Marie from Trinidad. The oil is being sent somewhere else. USA, for example, corporations are stealing the oil. Could you elaborate on that, Mister? Do you agree with that comment?
Well, I think that would probably be a comment that would relate to the export of oil from Guyana, because
Mm-hmm.
that's very easy to jump to the conclusion that the oil is being stolen. Um,
Mm-hmm.
with a 3%, there's only a 3% interest in the oil contract. You
Mm-hmm.
could virtually say yes, it is being stolen. But
Is being
at the
stolen.
end of the day, whoever negotiated that contract should be shot, drawn, and quartered, in my opinion, because it's
Right.
utter lunacy. Okay,
Right.
Guyana should have started at 30% and worked its way
100%.
up to a full 65% shareholding in 10 years, and then from
Mm-hmm.
there on gain complete market share and 100% ownership with a trained population in the oil and gas industry. That's how Trinidad is.
Yes. Yes. President Jafar is saying all this free energy in the Caribbean, sunlight, wind, and sea, to harvest green energy from it is utterly embarrassing. The Caribbean is on the verge of an energy crisis. Could you elaborate? Could
Well,
you,
it's not free
respond?
energy. Unfortunately,
Yes.
I'll have to disagree with the gentleman there because it's not free.
Mm-hmm.
It
President
actually
Jafar.
costs.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually cheaper to drill and one oil well than to
Mm-hmm.
put in solar, wind, and sea energy just to get a small island to sustain itself. It's cheaper just to drill an
Mm-hmm.
oil well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
The,
I
the,
think
the
President.
other
Go ahead.
the other option that we do have here in the Caribbean region, something that has been suggested and discussed on a couple of occasions on some of the podcasts that I've been present on, and something that I
Mm-hmm.
completely and totally agree with, simply because when I was doing the Free Winds Caribbean Food Security and Regional Development Initiative on energy projects,
Yes.
we actually designed a project for here in Barbados to use a small nuclear reactor. Okay. And the reason for using a small nuclear reactor in Barbados is that we could use a small nuclear reactor exclusively for industry development. In other words, factories and agro processing and so on, and light manufacturing and various things, and large energy consuming entities like our international airport and our seaport and our sugar factories and so on that consume a tremendous amount of energy would all be powered from the nuclear reactor.
Mm-hmm.
And hydrocarbons could power the rest of the population with a mixture of wind and so on put in there. But because we're so close to the equator, wind energy is not sustainable. And our sunlight is, because we're so close to the equator, our solar isolation is very low.
Yes.
So we do not have the capacity and the money to spend to make renewable energy work for the Caribbean. It just will not work. I'm sorry.
Jafar is saying also, no one in the West follows the green initiative that Mia is pushing in words only. Is
No,
that
he's
true?
right.
That no
He's
one?
absolutely correct.
Yeah,
Nobody's following it.
he's correct. Like, I agree with you. Made of not control the deal maker. I'm not sure what you're saying here, Pedro. Germany was lock, stock and barrel. I guess that something that we said. I wasn't following you guys. Guyana will not benefit from the oil industry. I think
It
that
will eventually. It
is
will eventually, but it's not doing it now. It
mhm.
will eventually.
Majority profits. The majority profits will go to. ExxonMobil? I think so. I just think that
Yeah.
as you're saying, we are living in a technocracy. So, well, it's your shot, Mr. Corbin. That you answer. Go ahead.
Well, in answer to the question, ExxonMobil will eventually be in a situation to contribute to the economy of Guyana in a better way than it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I say that is this: they are going to be forced to do a tremendous amount of extra drilling for
Mm-hmm.
oil availability if
Mm-hmm.
Iran maintains its situation,
Yes.
because the United States of America is going to become far more dependent on energy than before. So Guyana is
Mm.
actually going to be Guyana, Trinidad, and by extension, the rest of the Caribbean region is going to experience a windfall of benefit flowing into the region and investment and so on because of the United States of America demanding more energy. However,
Mm.
if the political situation in the United States of America goes toward a civil war, the Caribbean region is going to
Mm-hmm.
collapse. Okay.
Wow. Wow.
Now, I just wish to this comment here by
Yes.
WHZ
Yes.
366, where he
Mm-hmm.
says USA apparently bought the Caribbean from the UK when the UK economy crashed after World War II. That is not entirely accurate.
Mm-hmm.
The United States of America did not buy anything from the UK. The United States of America entered into an agreement with the UK on the 6th of September 1940, when Winston Churchill and Theodore Roosevelt, President of the United States of America, sat down and made what's known as the Destroyers for Bases Agreement,
Mm-hmm.
where 115 World War One destroyer ships were handed over to the British, and the British in turn allowed and ceded Caribbean British territories for America to build bases for the war effort against Nazi Germany. And the reason that that was done is that the decision had been taken as early as 1940 that one of the ways to combat Germany was to carry out an assault up the Italian peninsula. But you would have to get to North Africa first. The North African campaign would have to be launched by an invasion, a sea invasion into North Africa. And the only way to accomplish that was to be able to move massive amounts of American forces through the Caribbean region, across to Africa, and overland to the Mediterranean. Hence
Mm-hmm.
why Egypt became so important for the German military, um,
Mm-hmm.
Rommel's army, and then
Mm-hmm.
Montgomery, General Montgomery, then the actual defeat of the Germans holding Egypt, because Egypt and the port of Alexandria was a British territory. So if that fell to Germany, then the whole thing would have been lost. Fortunately, Montgomery prevailed, and the Germans were driven back across the Mediterranean. So at the end of the day, the Caribbean region became the absolute stepping stone importance for the American military to use Caribbean bases in order to reinforce the transfer of hundreds of thousands of American forces into Northern Africa for that campaign.
Yeah, and we can also see with the emergence of the petrodollar that they do control
Yes.
us. Yeah, yeah, so that
Yeah,
they really, we're not a direct colony, but we are indirect colonies of the United
that's correct.
States. We're not directly, but indirectly. So these people are buying and selling our nations from Africa to the Caribbean to Latin America. I'm not sure they're buying, as Fred is saying, they're just taking it. They don't have to buy it. They're just taking it over. What would you
Yeah.
say, Mr. Corbin?
Well, you have to remember that the same agreement that was done in 1940 was for 99 years. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a very important clause as part of that agreement, and it
Mm-hmm.
states, and I quote: "The United States of America reserves the right of re-entry to any territory under any conditions for the duration of this contract." So You have no control. They can come in anytime they like. However, in 1961, that particular agreement was amended in Port of Spain, Trinidad, to include
Mm-hmm.
that America would be seeking the cooperation of Caribbean governments in the event that it would have to re-enter territories.
Mm-hmm.
That put it very geopolitically nicely, rather than saying we're just going to barge in your front door. It just says, it puts the language in place where we would seek your approval before making a movement. In other words, it would have to become part of an international agreement then, in order for the United States to come into the region. And that's precisely what we saw happen in the build-up to the Venezuela situation. America made a formal request from the State Department to the government of Trinidad and Tobago, which granted them permission to operate from their land, and that was how it was done.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes,
there you go.
yes, and nobody speaks about the also secret, diplomatic,
Yeah,
conversations happening in the
we're not
Vatican and
yeah
other parts of the
we're
world
not
to get
privy.
these things figured out.
Yeah, we're not privy to the back channel.
Yes, yes. We have this rash. Is it rash? Yeah. Some of these names I'm not able to pronounce. This is a crisis that is far from over. What would you say on that?
Well, it depends on which crisis you're talking about. If you're talking about the
The
crisis
oil
in the
crisis.
Caribbean,
We're talking about the oil crisis.
yeah, if you're talking about the crisis in the Middle East, the Middle East is in a situation where the United States of America has been dragged into a war that it cannot win at the behest of Israel.
Does it
And
want to win war? I don't think it wants to win war. I think the United
no,
States wants world domination. It doesn't want to win wars.
the
It's not there
United
to win
States of
wars.
America has absolutely no ability to win a war against Iran. None.
It doesn't want
Period.
to win the war.
And it
Yeah.
can't win it. But even if Pete Hegseth, with all of his bravado and stupidity, wanted to win a war against Iran, it will never happen. Simply because Iran holds the cards of strategic interest in the region and has the ability to strike anything out to 4,000 miles away from its epicenter of operations.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to that, the
Right.
most important thing that we have to remember is that the reason that the crisis is far from over is that you
Mm-hmm.
have Israel in existence. If you want to bring peace to the entire world, eradicate Zionism.
Remember
That's
now that it was Biden who says that if Israel was not a state, that they would have to invent one, which suggests that United States doesn't need Israel. It really has propped up Israel as a pretext to achieve its agenda in the Middle East.
well.
But
What we
but
have to
the United
remember is
States can
that
do without Israel if it
yeah,
wanted to. But it really cements it can say, well, it's Israel's war. Israel is the one doing it because it's the one behind. It's a power behind Israel. The Vatican operates like that too.
yeah. The thing is, what we have to remember is that Israel is not a state.
Right. But they've made it one.
Right? Israel is not. Israel has never been a state. Why? Because the definition of a state is that it has defined borders.
Right.
Israel has no defined borders because
Right.
it's constantly invading one body or the other and so on, and
Right.
constantly shifting the goalposts all over the place. And Israel has never signed any United Nations treaty with regard to establishing state borders. Israel
Right.
is not a state. Israel is a sandbox gulag run by criminal entity. That's
I
it.
would say the same thing about the Vatican City too. That is in Italy.
Of
It's
course
not
it
a
is.
state, but it says it's a state, and it wields a lot of power around the world.
Yeah.
So the same can be said about that. Trump knows all what is coming. Just wait and see. That disaster is about to blow out. What would you say that he knows what's coming?
Well, I think people have different opinions on what's coming, but I
Mm-hmm.
think we're going to be. I think we were getting ready for round three,
Mm-hmm.
and in my honest opinion, round three will accomplish one of two things: either the complete destruction of Israel and the eviction of the United States of America permanently from the Middle East, or thermonuclear war.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, we saw, I call this COVID 2.0. We saw COVID, and COVID, there was some sickness. People were, getting sick from whatever it was. So we can't say that there was none, but it was. We know that it was engineered.
Yeah,
Was this war also engineered by the global powers that be?
of
How
course,
can we be
of
sure?
course,
Correct,
yeah,
correct.
of course it
And if
was.
so, and if it's so, we saw with COVID that the world was behind that virus. Are the global elites behind this war too? Do they
Of
want it
course,
to end? Are we the ones who are going to lose? Are they the ones who are going to win? Those are the questions that we need to ask ourselves.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We have renewable energy is another way to put us in debt. What would you say
Yeah,
about that, Mr.
yeah. Well,
Mhm.
I've answered that question already.
Yes, yes, yes.
It's we don't have the money
Yeah.
to do it.
Yes, correct. We need to go back to basics because our ancestors never failed. We all grew up nicely.
Well, we have to remember that our ancestors did not live in 2026. They lived in
Correct.
1726.
Correct,
Big
correct.
difference.
I like
Big
that. I like
difference.
that. I like that because sometimes we tend, as Black people, I must say, sometimes, and Caribbean people too, we live in the past. Now, we master the past to understand what is happening to us now, but we can't remain in the past. And oftentimes, we remain in the past. In Jamaica, they talk about man in the 70s, and okay, we've passed that, apply the lessons learned, but we're in 2026. Need batteries to store the energy, and we know how toxic batteries are. Now imagine a land full of batteries.
Well, fortunately, the technology for battery recycling is now at a premium, and
Mhm.
there are no batteries going to landfills anymore.
Yes, yes. Great insight provided by Mr. Corbin. It is important that we appreciate key factors that explain how we got here so we can properly strategize our way out of this. So they appreciate what you're saying. You listen to Trump speaking on renewable energy. I don't think so. Um, I'm not sure what
The only thing he has to say about renewable energy is drill, baby, drill.
that is it. He doesn't even probably understand what union energy is. He just wants some money. Trump is just
Yeah,
all about money. He's not. He doesn't
it's,
care.
yeah,
Yeah, he doesn't care. The humans is the carbon right they'll get rid of. Could you
that's correct.
explicate more? Of that?
That's
Yes,
correct.
that
No,
is
he's
what we're
absolutely
trying to
correct.
understand. Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what they're about. Not zero, net zero rather is the Paris Agreement, and Trump abandoned that and that end the WHO too. Well, how would you comment? It's your take, Mister Corbyn, on what he just said. Let me put back the comment.
Well, abandoning the Paris Agreement was the best thing that Donald Trump ever did for the world.
Mhm.
Okay, it's simply because the Paris Agreement was actually the one document that held the poor countries of the world to ransom, because that Paris Agreement was something that was used by governments in poor countries, or used by financial institutions and held out as a carrot on a stick to poor countries.
Mhm.
They said, "Oh, if you sign up to this Paris Agreement, we will guarantee you funding for this," and so on and so forth. And
Mhm.
countries were selling their sovereignty in order to be
Mhm.
able to look good on the international stage. Oh, we signed the Paris Agreement. Uh, for what? For what?
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
that's like that's like me. That's like me walking into Bridgetown, okay, and pointing a gun at somebody and saying, "Give me $5."
Mhm.
And that person says, "Well, I don't have $5." And I said, "Hold the gun for me 1 second while I lend you $5."
Mhm.
See how stupid it is?
Yes.
You hand the gun to the person that you're pointing the gun at, and then you're gonna lend them $5. What do you think is gonna happen?
Yes.
Right. At the end of
Yeah.
the day, the situation is so absurd. It is so stupid that sometimes I sit down and I actually wonder that if intelligently sane individuals have the well, how is it that so-called intelligently sane individuals can actually sit down and come up with this nonsense? I mean,
Yes.
it is absolute crap. I mean,
It is.
I am at a loss to explain the level of ignorant stupidity that I see in some of these documents. I mean, and a lot of I have seen while we were doing the research program for Free Winds Caribbean Food Security and Regional Development Initiative,
Mhm.
almost every single government department that we had discussions with, they were pushing this agreement across the table. Oh, well, we have to have this Paris agreement because of climate change. And I was like, are you all serious? Are you all serious about this? I mean, we're coming to you with the solution that takes this entire Paris agreement and exposes it for the absolute nonsense that it is. But you are still wanting me to sign a piece of paper to say that our proposal is going to acquiesce to the Paris agreement for which you think you have control. We're offering you something that can completely sustain you through anything that comes your way with regard to logistics, industry, agriculture, tourism, the whole 9 yards for your country. But you want us to sign a document that aligns our proposal with your Paris agreement.
Yes.
Absolute stupidity.
Because your agenda is people centered, right? And their agenda is not people centered.
It's just absolute nonsense.
Yeah, but it's not nonsense to them because they're not thinking of empowering us. They're thinking of doing whatever they want to do.
No, but the thing is, you have to recognize that most government departments across the Caribbean region are institutionally educated individuals who only know the narrative. They don't think for them. They cannot think for themselves. I remember having a meeting with the CARICOM representative for St. Lucia in Castries in her office. And the only thing that she could say at the end of our proposal is that's very interesting. I'll have to get back to you with
that's how they are. And remember too that we live in an authoritarian society. We tend to think we're democratic, but even when you go to an institution, people respond to what their boss tells them, and if their boss tells them or doesn't tell them they can't do that, then they won't think. So she doesn't want to lose her job, so that's why she had to just follow orders. Whatever the person higher than she is tells her to do, she has to do his or her bidding.
Yeah, and all we were asking is for recognition.
Yes,
we were asking for a simple letter of recognition from the CARICOM representative of St. Lucia to reinforce our position as a direct investment corporation coming into St. Lucia. And what we wanted from her was to have a letter from the CARICOM representation of St. Lucia that what was proposed for St. Lucia would actually be a benefit to CARICOM's inputs into St. Lucia. Never received a single piece of correspondence.
Right, but what if they had given you that permission? Then you would have it on documentation.
No, it wasn't permission. All it was an endorsement. That's all we
endorsement, or even endorsement. Yeah, an endorsement. Right. Yeah,
what that endorsement would have done is that it would have unlocked $100 million for St. Lucia.
Right.
Because our international financial institutions said, can you get CARICOM to endorse your proposal for St. Lucia? Because we could then put $100 million at the disposal of the government of St. Lucia in order to facilitate the community interaction that is going to benefit your proposal. It's like, duh.
Mr. Corbin, you other side, I know the Caribbean, and some of the things that I see us do here is just amazing. And then we complain, oh, things are bad, and we're not being the globalist and all of these stuff. When there are simple things that we can do to improve on our lives.
Yes,
simple
exactly.
Things,
Andrew, I'm going to have to wrap up here because I got to go to class.
Yes.
Is starting.
Let me just okay. Well, you can go ahead. Thank you so much, Mr. Corbin, for joining.
I want to thank everybody. I want to thank everybody for contributing tonight. I have to join my class in the University of Singapore in 10 minutes. So
okay, good. And we want to thank you, and we want you to come back and share your knowledge with us. Okay.
Thank you very much. Good night, everybody.
Same here. Good night. All right, so we'll continue with some of the responses. Let's go back to what WHZ was saying. He's saying here that they have destroyed our energy, agricultural and manufacturing sectors, making us dependent. And that is what, food is important for independence. And if we don't have food, if we are not self-reliant, then we are not independent. And that is what they have done. We have here that, we have no hydropower. Yes. and case our lack of strategic planning and effective risk management, as in the case of Jamaica, must be robustly addressed. Our governments filled with academic elites tend to ignore SMEs and make bad decisions. Yes, and it is, what this is something that is engineered. This is not something that is, I should say, happen through happenstance. It is engineered. That's how they want it, because that is how the global elites will be able to rule us. If we have all these SMEs and these middle-sized businesses, then we're not easily controlled. Now, our healthcare and education systems are under severe attack. They are. Steve Knight is saying, yes, on BV. And then we have, they have an agenda. We have to learn to go around their agenda. And that is what we're here for. We have to unmask the agenda, because if we don't know what the real agenda is, then we'll find ourselves siding with the wrong people, with the wrong agenda, which will eventually hurt us. Government needs consent, yes. And obviously, they're not thinking about us at this point. For that matter, they have been breaking down our education system a long time now. They have, all right? They have. And paid businesses to shut us down, and went and want reparations. Okay, yeah, that's interesting too, right? They're shutting us down, right? Small businesses, and yet still they're telling us that we need to get reparations from our former colonial masters when they're our current colonial masters, right? Make that make sense. Andrew, my brother, I see you are collapsing. Is it collaborating? Oh, collaborating rather, you will grow. Yes, well, yeah, well, depending on what the algorithm decides to do. And then, is this a good time, as he's suggesting here, is this a good time to have the live? I know that some of you work, and you come from work maybe after 5, 6 o'clock, you have to get your dinner. Do you think 7 o'clock is the best time? 7:30 rather, a best time to do the live? Before we used to do it at at 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock, thereabout. Should I do the live at 7:30? That is something that we have to explore. Remember, Klaus Schwab pay insufficient attention to disruption of cyber attacks. Yes, and I don't think that the Great Reset is finished. I think that we've just begun. God bless you, man. Yes, may God bless you too. We need fundamental reform involving the quality of tertiary education, fostering innovation tailored to solving our unique challenges, and using our own resources instead. We lecture and fail to apply. Correct. Very well said. We can do some great lectures, right? But we don't know how to apply our lectures. We're all guilty of that. Now, WHZ saying CARICOM is pushing for slavery reparations. And that reparation is going to be almost at net zero and sustainability. It's not going to be reparations for us. Please understand that this reparations that they're seeking is going to be in the interest of these global elites and not us. We've got to understand that. That's why they're pushing for it. Because what we want them to do, if we get reparations, we want them to build businesses, right? And to invest in food industry so that we can be self-sufficient, not to be giving us money and giving to our government who is going to steal. Nothing you ate, no, right? Then we have they're trying to break down CARICOM. I think that we are all fundamentally broken down. I don't think we're going to come back. I think this is it for CARICOM. Caribbean hands being tied by the destruction of our entire economies. Yes, I think that our hands are tied. Facts. Stephen Knight is saying. And then we have another here, very concerning to see the PM of Barbados manufacturing consent vis-a-vis the IMF by reforming their image and framing the dastardly system as something or somehow having the interest of the Caribbean at heart. Yes, that's what she's doing. I saw her at a meeting this week, and it was not pretty what she was saying, as if they're a great institution trying to help us when they're trying to destroy us. CARICOM should also ask the African slave traders for reparations too, but they are pretending that slaves were taken, although they see the slave markets. Well, that's very controversial, and that's how it's going to be a nasty thing. And the solutions are so simple. And if we get reparations also, we need reparations from our prime ministers because they have also presided over a very corrupt system, so we need reparations from our Caribbean leaders too. Some of these people act like sheep, and they are. And we seem to have failed to learn from the gutting of the Jamaican economy by the IMF in the late 70s, 80s, and also Trinidad's experience in the early 80s. Their MO has not changed, and we must push back. I think we believe that their MOs have changed, and as you're saying, haven't changed. They have evolved, right? And that's what they're doing. And they seem to be compassionate, but they're not compassionate. Completely misguided. We are. And we have Pedro saying, Jamot is saying again, CARICOM invited the mercenaries in Haiti and try hard to stop them from entering Venezuela. Then we have Chris is saying, this war is meant to crash the world economy. Poor countries will have to borrow from the IMF and they will set drastic measures. Very well said. We will never finish paying them off. We will be owned by the IMF. And note in Jamaica that we were almost on the verge of finishing, and then we had this, disaster, Hurricane Melissa, and we're now back to ground zero. So we'll never stop. They will always create things that will ensure that we are ever with them. The WTO, right? The World Trade Organization. We have WHZ saying, and Trump dropping bombs on our sea boats. Yeah, and and Kamala was agreeing with that. Mrs. Kamala, personal predecessor, agrees with that happening. She's not in any way. So I don't see her trying to unite us and to suggest that she is trying to, be like somebody, a morally upright person. I don't think she is if she endorsed that. Yes, we are not for criminality. Okay, so on this platform, we are not for criminality, and we want to solve the criminal element in our society. But we have to be careful when the way in which we do it. The way in which we go about solving that problem could create more problem in the final analysis. So Trump attacking movement in the Caribbean Sea by indiscriminately dropping bombs, in boats. Yeah, and we should be happy with that. That's protecting us, according to Mrs. Kamala Person Besesser. She's actually Miss Kamala Person Besesser. She's not Mrs. They're guarding the seas and blocking free movement and angry when Iran blocking the Strait of Hormuz. Yeah, the United States has always been hypocritical. They're making nuclear weapons, right? So why can't Iran be, able? Why can't they do what they want to do as a sovereign nation and make their nuclear weapons? Once they're not testing it on anybody and killing people, the United States should not be concerned about Iran or the Iranians making nuclear weapons because they're doing it. Then we have TDS is real, correct. Then we have the Star of David lies in Parliament above the Speaker's head, and study that. Well, I'll study that. Then we have Cuba is being deliberately starved. It's evil. They are being deliberately starved, right? And while the leaders are playing games and so forth, the people are starving, and we have to recognize that they're not starving, and they can, protest all they want. And Haiti is being destroyed with American guns. They are. And when you think of the fact, we like to talk about what happened in Venezuela and the kidnapping of Nicolas Maduro, but have we really protested against what happened to Jovenel Moïse in the former prime minister, president of Haiti in 2021, when they actually went inside his bedroom? Just like Nicolas Maduro, they went inside his bedroom. Well, at least Nicolas Maduro's life was spared and his wife, but this guy was slaughtered in his own bedroom, perhaps tortured, right? Okay, so let's get that together and see that these people don't mean us well. Disagree with that civil war claim. Yeah, I think there might be a civil war, but we can't say that it's going to be where after Trump leaves office. Could be, maybe not so. We don't know. Different European tribes fighting for world domination. That is what I think. And I would not only say European, I would say that it's the entire world fighting for world domination. The UN and the WHO, right? The World Economic Forum, if WB, JADB, IMF, all of them are on board with the globalist agenda. During COVID, everyone did the same thing. That's what we're saying. Everyone who didn't follow the protocol died or lost their jobs or whatever they might have lost. Yes. All right. And that is why none of them that we're saying is fighting for liberty of the world stood out and spoke out against the injustices that happened during COVID. Not one. So we have to be careful. After they get rid of Trump during COVID, all governments get. And then we have here, poor people has always or have always been pawns. Yeah. And the governments too are pawns, so we're pawns, they're pawns, only that they get some more, they get whatever payment that they get from their puppet, the people at the top, sorry, their slave masters. We get nothing. Fred, CARICOM, and the African Union wasn't created to gel. It'll never happen. Yeah, just like if we in the Caribbean, if we in the Caribbean as Caribbean nationals cannot unite, can you imagine us uniting with Africa and the African Union? It's not going to happen. And even in the African Union to the African continent, they're also not united. The Nigerians and the Ghanaians and they're not united as well. They're just not united. LOL, I thought Jamaica was tough, right? Trinidad runs the Caribbean. Somebody's asking. No, he didn't say that. He was saying that it was Barbados. Are you saying that Trinidad runs the Caribbean? But he was saying it was Barbados under Miss Mia Motley, who runs the Caribbean. White man runs Trinidad. I guess the white man runs the Caribbean too. Build trade using the US dollars, a single currency is needed first. I agree with that because the US dollar is a petrodollar. So they are going to do everything within the interest of the petrodollar. And that's what we have to understand. It's a very important point you're raising here, Pedro, that build trade using the US dollars. That's a very important point because the US dollar is controlled by energy and they want the best to back the dollar. So they are going to do whatever is in their best interest as opposed to our interest. So that's a very good point you're raising there, Pedro. Something is wrong with CARICOM. CARICOM always agreed with the US. That's what I think. Whether it is, under, the current chairperson or previous times, they've always agreed with the United States of America. Always. And we have 5 point stars saying Caribbean needs their own Abraham Traore. They do. We need they have to be more than one Ibrahim Traores because one person will not be interstables at this time. The white guy has a stronger Caribbean accent than the Black Caribbeans. Yes. And I did not know that there is, I know that we have colorism in the Caribbean, but I never knew that we see each other through white. And it's becoming more so now, because of the American media. So people are looking at themselves through the lens of being black and white and all of that stuff. I think we need to talk about that in the next video in terms of how do we perceive race and ethnicities in the Caribbean region, because subtly we are moving in the direction of the United States and the way how they view people and their own citizens. Haiti is a member of CARICOM, and CARICOM sided with the US and invite mercenaries and keep noise for Venezuela, a non-member. Deep thinking needed, not emotional thinking. Well, we have here, at that time, Trump wasn't president. Whether he was president or not, we can see that the agenda is the same. All right. So we need to move away from personalities and whether it's Trump or it's Biden or it is Kamala Harris, the agenda does not change. The style might change, right? And we might hear a more respectful rhetoric, but it doesn't mean, therefore, that the agenda changes. The war machine continues, right? Somebody's responding to S Point Star is responding to WHZ366. We are not talking about Nigeria. We're talking about Trinidad. Okay. We always talk about lockdowns, but we never talk about pressuring the US to stop the war, which is the source of the problem. It's not like the war is made up like the Wuhan wet market. Well, the war is engineered. right? The war is engineered. It could have been averted, but there are people who love war and profit from it, just like the people in the wet market or the virus. They wanted money from, they wanted control, so they created a virus to control the world. So the same thing with Iran. We're talking about now the United States is trying to secure its petrodollar, because without the petrol behind the dollar, because the dollar used to be backed by gold, so Trump is now using, and the United States is using, and wants to control all of the petrol, all of the energy in the world so that they can back their dollar. All right, that is one of the reasons for the war too. We must follow that. The dollar has been slowly dissipating with the United States debt growing every day, almost $40 trillion. It has to secure resources, and that's exactly what it's doing. It's going around the world and stealing people's resources to ensure that its economy does not falter. It's amazing how we think that the United States economy is up and running based on some natural, or through osmosis. It doesn't happen that way. It's through the stealing of resources, all resources that prop up the U.S. economy. Fred, the U.S. got Maduro oil. Right. He got it, and that is what he did, and Venezuela wasn't able to do anything about it. Yes, the damage is already done to the global oil infrastructure, but the sooner the war stops, the sooner the damage can be undone. Well, the war is not going to stop unless we stop it. All right? What are we doing to stop the war? What are we doing to stop the war? Some of the things, too, that we buy, we also have to educate ourselves in terms of, are we buying more than we need? And the same people who control the wars, sometimes we're building their war efforts through paying for things that we don't need while making them rich, and they are investing in wars and they're accruing more money while we are losing our lives. So we've got to also take stock about what we're doing. Good night. Is it Julian Rumbly? Good night, sir. And we have here WOM 1629. Right now, Exxon is pumping above what the safety regulations for those, is it FPSO is? Right. And Julian says here, listen from, where is this from? Is it SXM? Where's that? And then we have Napoleon is saying from America War, US business. Okay. Not sure I understand that. US imperialism did not go to war to win, but for business and control. This is the underlying sentiment I would like to express, as expressed here succinctly. The US imperialism did not go to war to win, but for business and control. If you can get this up in your room and you memorize this statement every day, then you will understand every sentence you read that comes from the newspapers every day. That the US didn't go to war because it wants to win. It went to war because it wants business and global control. Very well said. Love the statement. Napoleon is saying here too, since 1945, US imperialism never won a war. Very well said. Because imperialism and winning are two different things. And I did tell you also that people are talking about the Vietnam War is because the United States citizens and through the media, they actually unmasked the corruptions of the Vietnam War, and the citizens rose up. And at the time, the laws allowed them to do more than they can do right now. They were able to rise up, and that war stopped. Not because the U.S. wanted to stop it. They didn't want to stop the war, but the U.S. citizens forced them to do so. So we must understand that this isn't about winning, as you were thinking, and you get up every morning, oh, Iran is winning, and it doesn't work like that. Yeah, what's up? It's the Simon Show. And we have Napoleon is saying, and it is all business for U.S. elites. And I'm sure you are perhaps maybe from Haiti, Napoleon, Leguerre, so like you're from perhaps Haiti. And these people understand what they're talking about. We in the Caribbean, particularly in the Anglo-speaking Caribbean and the United States, don't really understand what is happening. Okay, and we've got to educate ourselves. Many people in Latin America, the ones who speak Spanish and Portuguese in Brazil, they will unmask a lot of what is happening, and we don't know what's going on. Okay, Now, Epstein files, this is very old chapter about elite systems. A third revolution may be coming. Well, I think that what is happening, the Epstein files, all of that are also drama to distract us away from what they are currently doing. Notice what they do. They have files and they decide that they're going to share some of a redacted version of the files with us, that we get all caught up and emotional with who was who and all the salacious, events that took place with Epstein. And then we got all caught up in this sort of, what would we call them again? We are watching almost like it is a soap opera. That's it. It's a soap opera that we're watching and we love it, don't we? Slimy, do you agree with Fred Corbyn's statement about PM Kamala? And this climate change thing is a psyop. It is. It is a psyop. And the Slimy show is saying if they can control the weather, they can control anything. I agree with that. What are you guys' opinions on Epstein files, a solution that connection of dots present and past? I think that the files, we have not learned the half of it, and they're not going to tell us the half. So you have to look at who controls trafficking, whether, any form of trafficking, to slavery, sex trafficking, drug trafficking. We have got to study that, and we've got to look who are on the belly of these systems, and then we will understand what happened to the Epstein file. To look at what they're telling you, you will understand that. Go and study the history of the Roman Catholic Church, and you will see who is at, the helm of trafficking in the world, and you will see a lot of their intrigues, won't you? Now we have this person saying same thing over here in Jamaica. So we have Pedro Jamati saying, controversial, what are sold in markets? The Gold Coast had slave markets. Yeah. I see that you're very, passionate, Jamat, about, blacks participating in the slave trade. Is there any Mossad agents? Where? It seems Marie Antoinette is saying as though the identities of the victims of the bombings in our Caribbean Sea are no longer being released as before. And the fact that we have not even, Marie, spoken about these things and we've just moved on, and you're saying that we are standing up. What are we doing? We're doing nothing. Absolutely nothing. The fact that this took place in the region and we've just moved on. And then we expect that some things are going to improve by just moving on when people are just murdered. And the same people who are doing these things are the ones telling us that they're trying to, to reduce crime and violence in our own countries, right? When our leaders are also involved, because Mrs. Kamala, person says that she's in agreement with what Trump did. So how can she be solving crime? How does she want to solve crime in Trinidad and Tobago if she has not spoken up against what happened when Trump decided and his team to bomb these people on their boats? Okay, without any evidence that they were involved in any criminality. So, are we going to trust these people? Can we really trust these people? No, we can't. Jesus Christ, what a name to have here. How powerful are the Freemasons in the Caribbean? Because most Caribbean leaders are Freemasons, very powerful. All right, they are powerful, and we've got to do our studies for ourselves, because many of them gain positions because, remember now that these are secret organizations. So if they do not accede to secrecy, then they can't get their positions, because that's why they won't tell you the truth, because they have already, consented that they will not release some of the inner things that are happening in government. All right, so that's why we can't believe our politicians, because most of them are Freemasons. Okay, what will the climate be when Trump is no longer in office? The same, and it might even get worse, because we're looking at what you call it now. We're looking at J.D. Vance, who seems to be interested in the position also, and he is the same, only that he's younger and he will do more harm than good, right? So J.D. Vance is going to be, if he wins the presidency, or if Trump has to, leave before the term ends, I think that we are also in trouble, and even Marco Rubio. So let's not just focus on Trump, but let's look at his possible successors and what could happen. Design Jamaica is saying, do you think there will be Trinidad and Tobago from CARICOM? I think that, yes. I think the only reason why they have not officially exited CARICOM is because it benefits them economically. But if it didn't benefit in terms of economical, then many people weren't buying their products from different Caribbean countries, I think they would have long exited. But I think that she understands, she's not that stupid to realize that if she decides to exit, then lots of the monies that flow into the Trinidad economy will be lost. Right? And make no bones about it, we think we are at the center of the world, but people might not buy our products. Right? Because people like what they, the other day there was a patty, juicy beef patty that went to the DR, the Dominican Republic, and they thought that they were going to get inside that market and make money. And nobody wanted Jamaican patties in the DR. They didn't want Jamaican patties, right? So in the Anglo-Caribbean, we might eat patties and all of that thing, but our products might not be accepted and nor just sold in other countries. Right? We think of our foods and what we have, our products as delicious or great, but maybe other people, other markets don't think that way. So we have to understand also that we have to look at culturally. We are more similar. We know each other. So it's best to remain with CARICOM. I'm not saying CARICOM is not in a terrible position now, but we have to fight with the enemy that we know, because we might end up going to fight with another enemy that we don't know, and they might destroy us. Is business as usual right or wrong? It's business as usual. I don't see anything that has changed or is changing. Which country is Fred from? He's from Barbados. I do not agree about what he said about PM Kamala. I don't agree too, but that is his state. So we have to learn to agree to disagree, right? And that's the whole beauty of Fred and the program when he comes, and any other guest. And Mr. Pereira, we agree on some things. We don't agree on all things, but that is how we need to be. We can't agree on everything, and that's why these programs are necessary, because we can be able to have different opinions, but so we can think and meditate, reflect. Sometimes too, not because you don't agree with what a person says, that you should just discard it, right? Sometimes you have to rethink it over and over to see if it makes sense, right? Because sometimes, in some cases, it makes sense that you're not seeing it now. I really don't agree with his position on Miss Kamala, person successor too, but that is his position. The fact that the names of the fishermen aren't known, and them boats had third and fourth, engines. Who needs 3/4 engines to fish? Just being skeptical. Yeah, you're correct. And we have, this has been one of the best talks in the Caribbean region. I'm really happy to hear many of the same thoughts that many of us have been having for a long time. Yes, and please share the because the algorithm has been trying to suppress the content, but make sure that you're sharing with, because these are the conversations that we should be having right now, but we're not having, as I'm saying, that we're more interested in hearing a 7-minute video that talks about the things that don't matter, and we talk about the things about the Chinese investments and these things, and we see things in isolation and we don't connect the dots, and that is what this program is largely about. When it comes to Freemasonry, especially in the Caribbean region, it is a big problem in the world at large for the average working class who are not part of it. So we have all of these secret societies, and if you go to universities, you also have them too. You have the sororities and the fraternities, and that is how they indoctrinate people, and people go over. But the thing about it is that these organizations are very key to receiving certain type of jobs, and people find themselves doing it because it connects them to their brotherhood and sisterhood. And if you know that your brother needs a job, and so it's a system that is beneficial to many people. Not all people go in it because they want to ruin the world, but the organization itself is not an organization, or these are not organizations that are going to teach you morality, right? That is what you have to understand. So that is how they view the world. People need to educate themselves more about the hidden organization, which is believed to have significant influence over much of the world. Yeah. Right? And there are many of them. The Freemasonry is just one. You have the Jesuits, you have the Roman Catholic Church, and the Roman Catholic Church is filled with a lot of orders, right? The Saint Augustine, the whatever of Saint Jerusalem, and they have so many different secret societies. And of course, we have others like the Illuminati and all of that. We need to study these things, right? Because I think many of us have been miseducated to think that they're just, a part of conspiracy. But yes, they are conspiracy, but they're real conspiracies, and we have to study them. Not to study conspiracies that are just some foolishness about, the Matrix and all of that stuff, but there are some real conspiracies that we must understand. Then we have, will you be surprised if Pan-Africans are Masons? I think some of them are. Remember that Masonry does not mean that you can be Christian. There are some people who are, by the way, there are some people who are Christians and they say they're Freemasons. You'll be surprised. And there are some people who are Freemasons and they're both on the right or on the left. So yes, anybody can be a Freemason once you're willing to abide by their rules and to maintain their secrecy. You can be, whether you're a lawyer, a doctor, a pastor, right? So yeah, there might be. I'm sure there are. Most of them are Fabians. And the Fabians it's a secret society. The Fabian thing is a secret society also in and of itself. Yeah. So we must study these things. And as we look at, I think that Mia Motley also was, she was tutored by a Fabian socialist. So Michael Manley and some of these people were also tutored by these people. So we have to look carefully at these people and with whom they are affiliated, not also to judge them. We're not here to judge people, right? But we have to understand what these organizations stand for, because if we don't, then we're going to find ourselves, just ignorantly doing things, making decisions, supporting people that are those people who want to destroy us. And we saw during the pandemic, many people supported those who were, supporting the V's, and they end up being destroyed. Wolves in sheep clothing. That's what they are. That's what they are. But it's people, like the Catholic Church that had a lot of these organizations that give people things and, philanthropic efforts. People think that they're wonderful. People think that these organizations are wonderful because they do some good. And that is how they hide their satanic agenda, right? That is how they hide their satanic agenda, through doing some good in the world. And they do some good in the world, right? They give scholarships and they feed the poor and do some amazing things. But if we look at what they do too, we can see that behind the scenes, they also help to damage and to destroy whatever freedoms that we have in the world. All right. So is this a good time to do our lives? Do you agree that 7:30 and beyond is a time that we should now do the live there from? Because some people might not get home by 4 o'clock and they might not be able to join the live. It's the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Correct. And not all Freemasons know what their agenda is until they get to the 30th degree. And many of them never get to the 30th degree. All right. So we also have to bear that in mind when they get now to the highest level, 30, 31, 32, 33, then they begin to understand that, whatever they were a part of. But even the lower levels too, they have to do some rituals, which I don't know why they do it. They would state something like that. All right. So yes. So do we? Yes, I think that is correct. Yes. Okay. So we will do the live from 7:30 because people have to get home. They have to eat and they want to sort of watch their news and do other things, probably talk to their families. So maybe 7:30 and beyond would be a good time to do the live sessions. So that, what about on Sundays? Do you think 7:30 on Sundays too, or do you think 7:30 on Sundays is too late? Do you think we should remain with our 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock time on Sundays? Or do you think we should just have, all lives 7:30 and beyond? Hear from. Well, I think that because you're at home on Sunday, so maybe the 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock is good. I don't know. Should I have the live at 7:30 and beyond on a Sunday? What do you think? Please let me hear from you, because what I don't want to do is to waste time. When I come on the live, I want to see people. I want to see that I'm talking to people. Well, I'm talking to people. If there's only one person on the live, you're a person. So let's not be rude here, right? If there's one person on the live or 3 or 4 people, I'm talking to people. But yeah, I would like to see more people on the live because it helps to sustain the channel when we have. Also, please contribute to the live. Those of you who want to make your monetary contributions, you can contribute to my Cash App, and the address is on the screen so that we can build. Yeah, so on Sundays we can Sunday are great. Yes, but at what time? Should I have it at 7:30? Please, in the live, please put 5 or 7:30. Which do you think is better? 4, 5, 7:30. Which time do you think is better for the lives on a Sunday? Just quickly put 7:30. You don't have to write a sentence. Just put 5, 7:30, 4 o'clock live, or even midday. Do you want us to have midday lives? Please share the live too. I don't want to come off the live, but I don't see at least 30 likes on the video, right? We went up to 70. I think 70 was the maximum, 74 people on the live tonight. So we should have at least, okay, 8 p.m. Somebody says 8 p.m. All right. Any other person? 7:30, 8. Yeah, because we could do this, because I want to have the live at a time when many people are settled into their homes. I know you are busy, you lead busy lives, so you might, have to come from work and cook and get your children all to bed and all of that stuff. So I'm aware of that. So what is I don't catch you live. I watched it. Okay, that's good too. But when you're on while the replay is good, and I appreciate that, it's good to have a number of you on the live too, because then YouTube decides what to push. A live means that they want to see great interaction, and that's when they decide to push it or not. So if the initial people on the live are not many enough, then they don't push it, and then you won't see the replay. Let's like the stream, family. Yes, please like the stream and also subscribe. Those of you who are new, please also subscribe to the channel. Very important that you do that. We are heading into very terrible waters right now, and we need to be properly engaged and informed, right? So it was great tonight seeing you. And what do you want me to talk about tomorrow? Should we have a live tomorrow? Because I'm willing to come and chat, because once you're here, you just tell me, and I will be willing to come back and join you and have another scintillating conversation. Stephen Knight, your 7 is good. All right, so 7 is good. Thank you so much. So what we'll do, we'll just put it at 7:30, right, to make sure that we have the lives at 7:30, so that everybody, some people say 8, so I just have it in between, so we can start, and then you'll join. Those who can join at 8, I will be still on. So thank you so much for joining. What do you want me to discuss in another live? Is there something that is on your mind that you would see that you'd like me to discuss? I know people are talking about Freemasonry and these, secret societies, and what are they about? What do you want me to talk about for the next topic? Should we talk about race in the Caribbean? Should we talk about, all of that? Because we're having cultural identities in the Caribbean. Another great program. Thank you so much, Stephen Knight. Keep it up. Thank you so much. And what would you like to see me talk about in the next program? Next program, what would be the title? Okay, I just choose a title, and I think you'll come and you will join. So thank you so much for joining. I know you have to go to your beds now. It's 10 o'clock and people have to go to work tomorrow. So I thank you so much, Apostle Creed, since you're on the Pope. Okay, good. All right, that's Apostle Creed. Okay, so Apostle Creed, the hidden agenda to poison our food. Okay, good. We could look at that, and we have the hidden, right? I got that. So yeah, so thank you so much. I don't want to make the live too long now. I know you have to go to your bed. you have work tomorrow. Thank you so much for coming and participating. And we want to thank Mr. Corbin for having come. And we hope to have him more times on the live so that he can share his wealth of knowledge with us. Thank you so much. Have a great night. Bye.